But what happens when being active actually hurts by the end of the day? This is the position I found myself in a number of years ago. Everything I wanted to do in my daily life, all of the activity it called for, was held captive to almost constant nagging pain. When I heard about Relief Factor, I was skeptical, but my wife said, give it a chance. Not long after I took it, I could feel the pain begin to melt away, and I've been taking it ever since. And I can tell you that Relief Factor has helped me get my life back. I love that it's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors, and about 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. Your first step to becoming pain-free just might be ordering a 3-week quick start for only $19.95. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF, or ReliefFactor.com. Find out all about this offer and feel the difference.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 6:03. Right now, we do have a very pleasant morning across mid-Missouri. It's going to be a pretty nice day today with snow on the way. Increasing clouds are high around 48. Tonight, we're expecting mostly cloudy skies with the overnight low around 27. And then tomorrow, the snow will move into mid-Missouri. And we'll talk with Kevin Schneider live on the air about weather in the 7 o'clock hour. But these numbers may be bumped up a little bit right now. 1 to 3 inches is what was originally projected. Looks like that could go up a little bit. These models continue to change. More with Kevin next hour. Our high tomorrow around 37, then snow all evening tomorrow night into Friday morning. Good morning, everyone, and here's some of the stories that we are working on for you at this hour. Missouri's Supreme Court Chief Justice is calling on state lawmakers to approve a bipartisan bill that's aimed at protecting the private personal information of judges and their families. Chief Justice Paul Wilson emphasizing court security during Tuesday's State of the Judiciary address.
Missouri judges have been harassed online and at home. They've been threatened, and they've had their personal information posted on the web.
Chief Justice Wilson says 11 states have approved legislation designed to enhance the safety for judges, and he's thanking Chesterfield State Representative Bruce DeGroat for filing the Judicial Privacy Act. That creates a new felony offense, Class D, of knowingly publicly posting on the internet personal information of a judicial officer or the officer's immediate family for purposes of tampering with a judicial officer. He also notes that we've had judges who attempted assassinations of judges in other states. That was a primary focus of his speech yesterday. Meantime, several counties in the 93.9 The Eagle listening area will be under a winter storm watch starting tonight at 9 o'clock. They include Howard, Randolph, and Saline. Most of our listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. National Weather Service St. Louis meteorologist Melissa Bird is expecting the snow to begin falling in Columbia, Jeff City by midday tomorrow, with snow continuing throughout the night into Friday morning. Bird says Jeff City, Columbia could see 1 to 3 inches of snow overall. Now, these numbers are likely going to be tweaked throughout the day. Local heavier amounts are possible. Areas north of I-70 could see anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. You'll want to keep your radio tuned right here to 93.9 The Eagle for updated weather information each hour with our newscasts. Missouri's governor is praising the winter weather response from MoDOT and also the Missouri National Guard crews during the numerous February storms. Governor Parson activating the National Guard for the first 2-day storm. That was in early February. It dropped 10 inches of snow here in Columbia.
MoDOT needs to be in those trucks clearing off roads. You know, the National Guard was there to be able to help stranded motorists, and which just makes us better.
MoDOT crews driving 2 million miles statewide in February using 86,000 tons of salt, 780,000 gallons of salt brine as well. National Weather Service says more than 15 inches of snow and sleet fell in Columbia in February that impacted schools across Boone County. CPS has taken 5 school days for winter weather, plus 1 2-hour late start. CPS's Michelle Baumstark says they'd look at eliminating one of their upcoming early release days if they have to take another snow day. She also notes the state law changed. Snow days are now built into the calendar via number of hours versus days. The state set a minimum number of required hours of instruction, 1,044 hours. That is the number. And CPS intends at this point to keep May the 26th as its last day of school. Grand opening is set for later this month to celebrate a newly renovated Tiger Hotel in downtown Columbia. It's actually being renamed as well, Voco the Tiger Hotel.
Zimmer's Inside Columbia magazine reports the newly renovated hotel and landmark will be offering more amenities and updated spaces. Voco is a luxury boutique hotel. Inside Columbia reports the historic Tiger Hotel sign will remain. The hotel includes the popular Glenn's Cafe. The facility is owned by IHG Hotels and Resorts. Don Luzader, 93.9 The Eagle.
All right, Don, thanks. The March 24th grand opening is scheduled, and an Ashland woman is facing criminal charges after allegedly assaulting an officer who was responding to a domestic dispute. That officer may have to have surgery after being injured on Tuesday. We'll have more, including her name, for you coming up at the bottom of the hour. 93.9 The Eagle News is brought to you this hour by AirServe Heating and Air Conditioning. AirServe Heating and Air Conditioning, ensuring the air in which you live and breathe is comfortable and clean for all of your heating needs. Log on to airserve.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:07. Turning our attention right now to sports, the Missouri Tiger men's basketball team will be playing in the SEC tournament. They open play today. Mizzou coming in to the game right now as the number 12 seed. They're going to take on Ole Miss, the 13 seed. 5 o'clock the tip-off in Tampa, Florida. That is our time, which means that pregame coverage on the Central Bank Tiger Radio Network will begin at 4:30. We'll have the coverage for you on our Zimmer station and our affiliate. That is KCMQ FM 96.7. Mike Kelly, Chris Trevino on the call. Again, pregame 4:30. They'll tip it off just after 5 from Tampa, Florida. Again, the format in these, just to remind folks, you win, you continue on in the tournament. When you lose, you go home and hope for a call from the NCAA or the NIT. That's how it works in these tournaments at this time of the year. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:08. All right, thanks so much, Kevin. We appreciate it. Right now, we do have clear skies, 30 degrees. Traffic check with MidmoHires.com. Local companies looking for local people. MidmoHires.com to find a job, post your job opening today. Roads right now pretty quiet in mid-Missouri. If you want to report a traffic issue, you can call or text us 573-874-9390. We'll have more team coverage in less than 30 minutes. We have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
You see, it takes courage to lead, to make the decision you know is right but may not be popular, to listen and cooperate and compromise, to build a future for everyone and not merely those who look and sound like us.
That was Chief Justice Paul Wilson talking about courage. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I had the opportunity to be in the Capitol yesterday and hear the state of the judiciary. It has been postponed for a couple weeks due to weather and other happenings in the Senate. But he was talking about 14 virtues that all Missourians should embody. And those virtues were identified by the commission that actually oversaw the building of the Capitol. And the virtues are actually listed or inscribed at the top of the House chambers up on the top. And he said, hey, we've identified these 14 virtues, but there's one missing, and it's courage. And then he goes on to talk about it's courage to do the thing even if it's not popular, and it takes courage to cooperate. Hannah, do you think that was maybe a little bit of a subtweet of some of his friends in the legislature?
I think it definitely was.
So Control F is one of my favorite things to use on a computer, and if you use Control F, you can find whatever word might be in the document, and the transcript of his speech is posted. And I actually went back because I said, I heard this word a lot yesterday. I wonder how many times he actually said it. And I think 8 times he used the word cooperate. And so that was a theme throughout. And I think, he was talking about, being a public servant and a life as a public servant, and how, it does take some cooperation. He talked about separation of powers, but the speech really focused on 3 things: compensation, security, and infrastructure. Now, Brian, you had mentioned in news a little bit about the security. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think you summed it up very well there, Stephanie. There's no question about it. To me, in terms of what we follow in the news, I would put the security at the top. But you're right, cooperation was huge. He getting back to that just for a second, he more or less said we don't want to be adversarial. In fact, he said they need to cooperate more. But in terms of the security, there is a bill that's been filed by Bruce DeGroat, who is from Chesterfield. Pretty simple bill, Judicial Privacy Act. It creates a new felony offense if someone knowingly publicly posts on the internet personal information about a judge or a judicial officer or the immediate family. That would be a felony D, charged with tampering with a judicial officer. Now, there's a couple of other things. If someone posts on a forum, let's say an address of a judge or someone who is an officer of the court, that person, if the person who has been posted, if they reach out, they have to reach out to the person who posted. That'd be a little difficult. But if they do and the people don't take it down, they have 5 days to take it down. That'd be part of the bill as well. He talked about, Judge Wilson talked about the fact that there have been assassination attempts in other states. He mentioned New Jersey. He mentioned Illinois. He says Missouri judges are being threatened. Their families are being threatened. And he also said, Stephanie, that we've come a long way, but he referenced Kenneth, and I know Jennifer Bukowsky will remember this, Kenneth Baumruck. I grew up in Florissant. That case happened. Kenneth Baumruck was from Florissant. He went into a courtroom in St. Louis County, and the Chief Justice, spot on, he used the term execute. This guy executed his wife on the witness stand, shot a judge, shot his own lawyer. Huge case out of St. Louis, but he referenced that it was a rampage, basically, 1992. So really he hit on that. And that was, to me, he said, we don't want to do too little too late, so we urge them to take action. It was pretty powerful, I thought, what the Chief Justice said.
I thought it was powerful as well, and Brian kind of stole my thunder. But yes, we are joined this morning by my friend and local attorney, Jennifer Bukowsky. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here, not only because somehow Hannah and I yesterday missed that it was International Women's Day. I'm not...
Yeah.
We're celebrating today.
Okay.
Yeah, we come in really early. That's the excuse I'm going to use, right?
And I'm not surprised that Branden didn't bring it up at all, but we are celebrating today with 3 women on the show. But I'm also really interested, the security issue, I don't practice criminal law at all, so it's not something, that I think about necessarily on a day-to-day basis, and I think it does come up more in criminal law context generally. But Jennifer, you are a criminal defense attorney. When you talk to other attorneys and then judges, is it a concern you hear a lot about?
No, this is the first time I'm hearing it, but every time I hear creation of a new felony, it just rubs me the wrong way because we have overcriminalization. The behaviors that they're concerned about are already covered by other criminal laws, and it just concerns me when you're criminalizing speech. And I don't know what the mens rea or mental state is proposed for this new law, but making a Class D felony posting information about judicial officers on the internet, it seems like a power that could be abused by the prosecutors against people that may or may not have had the intent that we are concerned about. And citing a 30-year-old incident from 1992, as horrific as it was, doesn't seem to be urgent, justification for the creation of a whole new felony in our code.
I'm so glad you're here this morning. That's a really fascinating take, Jennifer. So I think the other thing that that the Judge Wilson or Justice Wilson was talking about too was not only security but infrastructure. And I thought that was really interesting because we have had some folks talking about rural broadband here on the show, and he was saying, with all of the virtual, when we went to COVID, everyone went to basically virtual court, and we are still actually utilizing that a lot. I've had some proceedings virtually, I think, not only for meetings but for court as well, and without the rural broadband and better infrastructure, he was saying, it's really difficult to continue the court processes that we need to continue if people don't have access, and just emphasizing the importance of court access. The other thing he talked about was compensation, and I thought that was really something interesting too, because I hadn't thought about it. We talk about it in the context of, small businesses not being able to get employees. We talk about it with police and having difficulty recruiting, but he said, courts aren't immune from these regular economic pressures, and it takes a lot of folks, a lot of dedicated court clerks and court staff to make the courts go, and it's expensive to train these folks and to recruit these people, and if we're not paying them sufficient salaries, then we're having difficulties staffing up as well. So, that's not something I had really contemplated, but it was interesting. And obviously, know your audience, right? The legislature has control over the court's budget, and they need money to fund these positions. And so it was, in that kind of context, I think, saying, hey, we're just letting you guys know, just like every other department in the state, we need additional funds for employees. So
he was complimentary of the supplemental budget that provided the state employee pay raises about 5.5%. And he went off the script just for a second and he praised the governor for putting some recommendation in there for some, and I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but he mentioned some extra security as well that the governor has recommended. So yeah, it was I thought an interesting, newsworthy speech. He told some jokes about he accidentally knocked Jack Danforth down on the ice skating rink at Washington Park Ice Arena when he was a child, which was interesting. But really, the tone of it was pretty serious.
So some other things happening yesterday in the Capitol. I think, again, not a whole lot happening in the Senate. But, Brian, you were saying that voter ID was something that came up in the House.
Yeah, it was perfected, Stephanie and Jennifer, yesterday in the House. So it needs one more vote. There's no question it's going to pass the House probably tomorrow. We'll see. We call it third read Thursday. That's kind of what they call it. And then the question will be what it does in the Senate. But really, in a nutshell, requires a photo ID to vote, requires people voting in person by use of absentee ballot to establish their identity, and changes some of the affidavit requirements. If someone doesn't have voter ID or personal ID, they could cast a provisional ballot. A lot of the arguments are the same things that we have heard before. The supporters say it would prevent voter fraud. Opponents say that there have been no cases of voter impersonation fraud since 2006. Jay Ashcroft may disagree with that. We'll have to talk to him later. But it also mentions older people often lack voter ID and documents. It can take a long time to correct it. There are some that are concerned on the Democratic side it will cause minorities to have a harder time to vote and older people. So we'll see what happens. The biggest thing is in the Senate, that bill has died the last several years, but it did go up. It's John Simmons's bill. He's from over in Franklin County, and the bill, for people who want to read it, is 1878.
Well, and it's a really, I think, an interesting day for voter ID to come up, especially with the state of the judiciary, because the Chief Justice led with kind of a separations of powers opener. But if you recall, the legislature has already passed. We already did have voter ID for, I think it was implemented for 2 years maybe. But then the courts, it was the Missouri Supreme Court that ultimately struck that down.
On one provision, correct. And the legislature will argue that they have tweaked it since then in response to the court. And again, I'm not an attorney, but yes, it was struck down by the Missouri Supreme Court. They've come back. No matter what they pass, if they do pass, it would probably end up in the courts again. But a lot of these arguments that people have made are stuff that we have heard before, no question.
Okay, well, we have an exciting show coming up. I'm really excited. At 6:36, we're going to talk to Garrett Hawkins. He is actually the president of the Missouri Farm Bureau. He's in D.C. right now lobbying on behalf of Missouri farmers, so really excited to talk to him. But coming up next, we will have your daily D.C. rundown. Jen, I know you heard what Biden said yesterday.
Oh, boy.
It was one of the most bizarre things I've heard thus far. We will have that and more coming up.
Hello, I am Branden Rather. The vehicle I'm driving is like 16 years old, well over 100,000 miles, and this thing, man, it purrs, runs very smooth. And here's why I attribute it solely to Gap's Automotive Repair Shop. Sure, everybody in town knows now Gap's Automotive Repair Shop. They do great work. They can work on just about anything. people come to town when they're moving here, and more people are saying, yeah, I'm looking for a good mechanic. Where do I go? People know they're going to Gap's Automotive Repair Shop. But check this out. If you have a vehicle, you want to keep it, Gap's Automotive Repair Shop, because here's the thing they're saying is what they do is they tell me, hey, if you want to keep it, here are some maintenance types of things that you might want to do. And I love that about them. And I can say, yeah, I'll do that, or no thanks. The longevity of your car, man, it's at stake. Take it to Gap's Automotive Repair Shop in Columbia and in Boonville.
No, I'm serious. This guy's the real deal. The three congressmen you have here, two of them look like they really could and did play ball, and the other one looks like he could bomb you. And it's a tough group, but a good group. Look, I want to thank you and your staff for welcoming us to town.
Seriously.
It's a one-stop shop connection for people in this county.
I wonder which one is which that he's referring to, Stephanie.
So two people can play ball, which is not like a bad thing to say. Like they look athletic, big people maybe. I don't know. But the other person, what did he say?
Looks like he could bomb you.
Looks
so
like he
it's
could.
Three men, all of them hair challenged, as we might say. two are black and one is white. And that's the comment that he makes.
Yikes. And that gets us into our daily D.C. rundown. So yesterday, President Biden was in Fort Worth, where he made this bizarre statement that people have taken to social media.
Put him back in the basement. Basement Biden. Bring that back.
That's exactly where he should be. He was supposed to be talking about military veterans. He has this plan on combating the opioid epidemic, addressing mental health, and supporting veterans. No one's talking about that. They're all talking about his comments yesterday and social media is going crazy about that. He did announce an immediate embargo on Russia's oil. Yesterday, we kind of knew that was coming. Congress also addressed the $14 billion package to deliver aid to Ukraine. Something really interesting happened yesterday, I think, also in relation to Ukraine. I guess Poland made an offer to give the U.S. some fighter jets, but they were going to be routed into Germany first. And so Poland was going to send the jets to Germany and then kind of give them to us, and then we were going to give them to Ukraine. And we were like, nah, no thanks. And so I think, everyone's trying to figure out how do we help Ukraine without making Putin too mad.
This was violating treaty or starting a war.
Exactly.
It sounds like a bunch of lawyers, international lawyers, are looking for loopholes and ways to help the Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so, I think there's also talk about a no-fly zone, and everyone. I think the rational minds are saying for sure that would be an escalation. No. And I think that while a lot of people are talking about it, I think the rational and reasonable people are saying that's off the table.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a commitment to shoot down Russian planes if they fly over that and launch us into war.
Now, we're talking to someone really interesting later, and Josh Hammer, and he has a really interesting perspective on Ukraine. And I heard him recently say he thinks this whole thing's going to be over pretty soon. Are you of that opinion?
I think that's wishful thinking. Putin went into Ukraine and took over Crimea in 2015. He hasn't left it then. I don't see any incentive for him to back down from his current course, except if the Ukrainians make him do so.
Yeah. Now, do you have any opinions on whether this would have happened or not if Trump was still president?
I don't think it would have. I think that he sensed weakness in Biden's leadership and that he saw an opportunity there.
Well, never fear, Jennifer. Someone is on the way because Vice President Harris departs today for Poland and Romania to bolster U.S. support for NATO partners. So she should be able to clear everything up, right?
She should. Did you see that clip of her saying, well, Russia is a big country. And next to it is a smaller country named Ukraine.
Hopefully she is studying up on her geography before she makes her trip. But yeah, so she is headed over there. We will see if she has any more things to say about geography or anything else as she departs today for Poland. Coming up on the show, again, we're really excited. We're going to have the Missouri Farm Bureau President, Garrett Hawkins, and he's actually in D.C. right now. But interestingly, we're going to ask him about how this Russia-Ukraine situation is affecting Missouri farmers. There's a lot of wheat that comes out of that area, a lot of corn, a lot of soy, and it actually does have an effect right here at home. So we'll be talking to him at 6:35.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. There's another attempt at a ceasefire in parts of Ukraine today to open evacuation routes. A budget deal in Congress includes $13.6 billion in military and other aid for Ukraine and for European allies taking in refugees.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said
they need these arms simply to defend themselves against brutal Russian aggression.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell complained.
It's been like pulling teeth to get out of House Democrats what the Ukrainians obviously need.
Lawmakers are hoping to get the measure through the House today and through the Senate by Friday.
Fox's Jill Nato. President Biden meets with business leaders today about the Innovation Act.
The legislation, which was passed last summer by the Senate, would increase manufacturing in the U.S., strengthen supply chains, and work to clear bottlenecks. The House passed its version of the bill last month, and negotiations on a compromise bill are in the works.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. America's listening to Fox News.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 6:31 right now in Columbia. We do have clear skies. We're at 30 degrees in Columbia. We're expecting a high today of around 48. We've got some tough news about the storm coming in because our snow totals have just increased. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Cloudy skies tonight, low near 27, and then snow coming in tomorrow into Friday. Again, our numbers look like they are going up. I just spoke to the National Weather Service. Tomorrow's high 37. Snow will end on Friday morning, late morning, and a high on Friday around 34 degrees. Right now, it's 31 degrees in Columbia. Good morning, everyone, and here's some of the stories we're working on for you. At this hour, we will begin with the winter weather. Snow projection totals are now being increased for Columbia in the latest models from the National Weather Service in St. Louis. I just got off the phone with the National Weather Service office in St. Louis. Most of the listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. The National Weather Service is expecting snow to begin falling here in Columbia and Jefferson City by midday tomorrow, sometime around noon, with the snow continuing throughout the night tomorrow into Friday morning. Now, Columbia is now projected to receive 2 to 5 inches of snow by Friday. About an hour ago, we were looking at 1 to 2. Jefferson City has also been bumped up a little bit, anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. Now, some of you will see a little bit less, some more than that. If you're in the Moberly and Fayette areas, points north, it's going to be more than that. The heaviest snow will be in northern Missouri. Keep your radio tuned here to 93.9 The Eagle. Updated weather information, and our morning meteorologist at ABC17, Kevin Schneider, will join us live in the 7 o'clock hour as well. February's winter storms closing schools across mid-Missouri, including the region's 2 largest districts. CPS has taken 5 school days for winter weather plus 1 2-hour late start. CPS's Michelle Baumstark says if they have to take another snow day, they'd look at eliminating one of their upcoming early release days. JCPS had 7 total snow days in the month of February. In Ashland, a woman is facing criminal charges after allegedly assaulting an officer during an incident involving her husband.
An Ashland police officer on the mend after being injured during a domestic disturbance that happened Tuesday morning. Officers were called to Main Street and Redbird Lane where they tried to arrest a man when a woman, identified as Krista McKee of Ashland, assaulted one of the officers. He had a torn Achilles tendon and may require surgery. John Marsh, 93.9 The Eagle.
The Missouri Supreme Court's Chief Justice says the state of the judicial branch is sound. Chief Justice Paul Wilson from Jefferson City delivering his State of the Judiciary address on Tuesday in Jefferson City. He credits Missouri's 350 trial judges and the more than 3,000 court clerks, bailiffs, court reporters, juvenile officers, and juvenile detention officers.
They are the ones who kept the courts open through the pandemic. They are the ones who work to help keep Missouri kids safe, who collect and disperse more than $100 million every year.
More than 750,000 circuit court cases were resolved in Missouri in 2021, according to Chief Justice Wilson. 93.9 The Eagle News is brought to you live in this 6 o'clock hour by Mid-America Mortgage. You can check them out online, midamericanmortgage.us, and apply now for a loan on your dream home. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:35. In sports, the Mizzou men's basketball team opening play in the SEC tournament in Tampa this evening. They'll take on number 13 seeded Ole Miss. Tigers, the 12 seed, tip-off set for 5. All the action, Zimmer Central Bank Tiger Network affiliate KCMQ FM 96.7. 4:30 will be the pregame coverage. Mike Kelly, Chris Trevino on the call. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:35. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. Midmohires.com to find a job, post your job opening today. I'll have a little more detail on this at 7:03, but Providence and Vanderbilt, you might recall there has been some work. Someone drove into a pole, and they've been working on at that location. Well, they're not going to be able to get out there at least right away this morning. They need concrete. They have to get the concrete, extra concrete for that job, so they hope to get out maybe today or tomorrow. But when they do, they will certainly let us know. But that should be all right. Shouldn't have too much of an impact. But once they get out there with the concrete, start working again, there will be some backups in that location. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes. Breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Welcome in to Wake Up Columbia. We are celebrating International Women's Day a day late. Branden has the day off. This is Stephanie Bell, and I am joined by Jennifer Bukowsky. Brian Houseworth is also here.
Good to see you.
And producer Hannah.
Good morning.
We are so excited that you are joining us today, and we are really excited about our next guest. I had the opportunity to visit the Missouri Farm Bureau building in Jefferson City recently for the Missouri the Statesman of the Year event. There were so many people there. The event was so well done. The facility was beautiful, and just hearing about the reach of the Missouri Farm Bureau and their priorities really interested me. So we want to welcome into the show Missouri Farm Bureau President Garrett Hawkins, who happens to actually be in D.C. This week talking about Missouri farmers. Welcome into the show, Garrett.
Well, thank you for having me. This is quite the crew. I am honored to be with you this morning.
Well, thank you so much. We are honored that you are joining us again. Can you tell us a little bit more about your week in D.C.? Who have you been meeting with, and what are the things you are talking about?
Well, Stephanie, it's interesting. This time of year would normally be the time that we would have a delegation of a little over 100 Missouri farmers and ranchers with us in Washington, D.C. to talk about Farm Bureau's priority issues. It wasn't until just recent days that Washington really started to open up. So we're essentially testing it. I've brought a small group of my team from the home office with me, and we're making the rounds to our congressional delegation as well as meeting with key officials from USDA and the Environmental Protection Agency.
And I saw a social media post yesterday that you were talking to the USDA about climate smart ag. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
You bet. So you may have heard that the U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack was recently in Missouri at Lincoln University to look at ongoing research as well as launch a new initiative at USDA in which they're going to essentially redirect $1 billion to what they call climate smart agriculture. We can get into all the debate about climate and the influence or lack thereof of man on the climate, but we at Farm Bureau are really focusing on what we do really well as farmers. That's produce food, feed, and fiber, and we do it in a very sustainable way. And so we reached out to USDA to essentially urge them not to overthink this, that in fact farmers were doing green agriculture and climate smart agriculture before anyone ever gave us credit. And so we're talking about common sense conservation, ways that we can continue to preserve soil, enhance water quality, and just do even more stewardship on the ground as America's frontline conservationists.
Mr. Hawkins, great to have you with us. Brian Houseworth here, and we appreciate you joining us live. I want to ask you about a bill that I've covered extensively, and I know we're kind of awaiting debate in the House, but it's the Grain Belt bill. It's the eminent domain bill that Representative Hansen carried for years. It's now Chairman Hafner. It has been approved in committee, waiting to come up on the House floor, and essentially this is about the Grain Belt Express. It would go across North Missouri. You know about it better than anyone, but it would cross about 7 counties, including Randolph and Monroe and Sheraton in our area. And before basically the PSC would allow them to do it, the county commissions would have to give approval in each county. Now, opponents say it's unconstitutional, that there'll be lawsuits. The supporters include all the agricultural groups. Your thoughts, A, on the bill, and B, any chance this is going to get through the Senate? I think the House has a good chance, but what about the Senate?
Well, Brian, I really appreciate you bringing this up, because when we talk about private property rights, that issue goes back to the foundation of Farm Bureau clear back when we were started in 1915. And so Grain Belt in this case really is the tip of the iceberg. And this session, working with Representative Hafner as well as Senator Bean, we're telling the broader story as to why Grain Belt should lead to a broader discussion about private property rights as well as the future of energy transmission in this country. For us in Missouri, we are in the crosshairs because we are at the cross section of the country. And as the Biden administration looks for ways to push more green energy, as they look for ways to enhance the grid, all of us have to recognize that Missouri is at the middle of the country, and Grain Belt is the tip of the the spear, so to speak, for other transmission projects that may be coming down the pike. So the conversation really has broadened, Brian, this legislative session to talk about more comprehensive protections that are needed for eminent domain reform. Now, I want to be clear. We're pro-energy. We're pro-American energy, and we understand the need to enhance the grid. At the same time, we are the envy of the rest of the world when it comes to our infrastructure, and that's in large part due to the use of private land, farm and ranch land, in order to make these projects happen. It's only fair that farmers and landowners are taken care of and that their rights are protected. But in the case of Grainbelt, make no mistake, this is a private for-profit company that it really is unprecedented in which we're using eminent domain for private gain. And that's been at the heart of this issue all along for Farm Bureau members and landowners along the route.
Now, I want to take us from Missouri to the international stage. I'm sure in D.C., everyone is talking about Russia and Ukraine. As you engage in those conversations, especially with all of your members here around Missouri, how is that affecting Missouri farmers?
Well, our hearts and thoughts are with the people of Ukraine. This war is so unnecessary, and it is heartbreaking to see what is happening. And certainly our farmers, our members, are following it on the news like every other Missourian and American. But I would say, when you look at this war and you look at the economic contributions of this region of the world, this essentially is Europe's breadbasket. And 29% of the world's wheat exports come from this region when you look at Russia and Ukraine. And so the impact on the Middle East and other countries that are dependent on their wheat exports as well as corn exports, what we're going to see is a jump in the need for food aid. I mean, we're already seeing it with the mass refugee migration that's happening now, and the increase in need for water, food, etc. I also have to say, as we go into planting season, you can't talk to a farmer who isn't concerned about fuel prices, fertilizer prices, and what it's going to do to our bottom lines. But we know this war, we're going to be impacted here at home. But if I can tell your listeners anything, we are food secure here in the United States. Food security is national security, and that's been our policy for decades. So we're going to get a crop planted this spring. I'm going to wean my calves just like every other cow-calf producer that'll have calves to wean later this spring. We're going to continue to produce food, but it's going to come at a higher cost. And it's not going to the pocketbooks of farmers and ranchers. Everyone along the supply chain is feeling this pinch that's already been there for the last 2 years, and now we're going to be even more pinched in the form of higher fuel prices, higher energy prices, and we're going to continue to see it. Unfortunately, there isn't a silver bullet or a light at the end of the tunnel at this point.
Are there other priorities, either addressing, fuel prices or inflation, or other priorities in the State House that the Missouri Farm Bureau is focused on this year?
Well, the biggest probably area that we are excited about is the opportunity to make an unprecedented investment in broadband around the state. No longer is broadband or high-speed internet a luxury, but it is a critical infrastructure that's needed. Every day I focus on the greater goal of how do we bring the kids home? How do I bring my kids home to the farm? How do I help my fellow farmers and ranchers bring the next generation home? We can't do it without broadband now to be along not just the main street of our communities, but it's got to be deployed out to the rural and farm homestead, and we've got to get it done. And so we're excited about the governor's plan and know that the legislature is having discussions, but we've got to get this done. We've got to get those monies out the door and invest in this critical infrastructure.
Well, and you have an ally in Chief Justice Paul Wilson, who gave the State of the Judiciary yesterday, who also said rural broadband is essential to, open access to the courts. I want to thank you so much. I know you all are busy. I know you have a full day today in D.C., and we will be watching your social media feed to see all that you are up to. And so thank you so much for joining us, Garrett. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Just keep doing what you do. We appreciate your willingness to help us tell the story.
Thank you, Garrett.
All right, coming up, we are going to talk about another piece of legislation that passed in the House, something really interesting, No Patient Left Alone Act. I was really moved by this, but I haven't heard that much about it. Coming up at 6:48, we will talk about that. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle. Welcome in to Wake Up Columbia. I am Stephanie Bell. Branden has the day off, and I am joined by Jennifer Bukowsky this morning. Producer Hannah is also here. So we are talking, and we are celebrating. Brian Houseworth is not currently in the studio, so we currently have an all-girl lineup. We are celebrating International Women's Day a day late. But I was really interested to see this press conference yesterday in the state capitol about the No Patient Left Alone Act. And I had not heard a lot about this legislation going through the Missouri House, but it addresses, I think, a major concern of folks during COVID, and I think especially about early COVID. And one of the most impactful things about the pandemic that I won't soon forget was I was actually listening to the radio, and it was very early on in the pandemic. And I heard this story about a daughter who they thought her dad had COVID. And so dad and mom and daughter are in the car. They go to the hospital. They let dad out because the mom and daughter are going to go park. Well, then mom and daughter get to the front door of the hospital, and by the time they did, dad had already gone in and said, I think I might have COVID, and basically been whisked away into isolation. And the daughter told this horrific story about how she basically never saw her dad again. He got very ill and ended up passing away. Again, it was very early on in COVID and was in isolation the whole time. And that, to me, was horrific. And I was really so touched by that story. I said, I wasn't visiting my parents at the time because they were older, and so we were still kind of keeping our distance. That's how early on it we And I said, hey, we need to talk, and I need to come over to your house. And so I remember very vividly, we sat on their front porch 6 feet apart outside, and I said, look, I heard this story, and it's freaked me out. And I think it should freak you out too, because I think, no one wants to be sick and dying and not be able to be with her family. And we were all, by the end of it, we were all in tears. I probably will be in tears if I try to talk too much about it. But I said, look, I don't care if you have COVID or not. If you think you have COVID, you're not allowed to go to a healthcare facility and not call me first. Do not walk in those doors. Just don't do it. You have to make this agreement with me right now. And I said, we will have a family meeting, and I'm going to get emotional. We'll have a family meeting in the hospital parking lot, and we will hug before you walk in those doors, because at the time the prospect was, you didn't know if you would see them again, right? And so, yeah, by the time I talked to my dad and my mom about this, we were all in tears, and we said, okay, that's the agreement. No one walks into a healthcare facility without saying whatever you need to say before that, right? We're getting all emotional. But it was a hard conversation. It was one that I won't forget. And so I thought this was really interesting. No Patient Left Alone Act basically allows a patient in a healthcare facility to identify 4 essential support persons to be kept on file and allowed for visitation. And then 2 of the 4 persons are guaranteed to be allowed to be present with the patient during this stay. What do you think about that, Jen?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it, because I don't tend to believe that less freedom is the answer to our problems, and imposing more laws and restrictions on employers and people that are trying to run businesses and hospitals is necessarily a good idea, because you have unforeseen consequences. But I have, my father-in-law passed away of COVID last year and did go into the hospital, and it was hard because, he's not in great health, and it was hard of hearing somewhat. And so we're trying to assess what is going on and talk to the doctors and nurses, and to not be able to be there and be an advocate for your loved one who is dying in the hospital is very hard. Like, I don't think anyone should be at the hospital without an advocate. But at the same time, when you're facing a pandemic situation, there's a balancing act that has to be had, because you want to control the spread of a disease. We had an overreaction to this one, I think, in hindsight. I think that will prove to be true.
I think you're right on that.
But at the same time, what if the next one's worse? I don't want there to be some sort of law that requires you to be able to have 4 people in the room with you, contracting this disease and then potentially spreading it.
Exactly.
If there's a future worse disease, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and whether you run a hospital or another business, I mean, can you imagine another business where you for some reason you wouldn't want that many people, and you get a mandate like, well, every person gets to have 4 people come with them. I mean,
and then you have to have lawyers write these forms out. There's got to be they already have a million requirements where they're having you sign off on, permissions to be giving medical treatment and privacy acts and all that other stuff. That would just be one more thing to pile on in the paperwork at the hospital.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I mean, this was perfected in the House. I haven't checked with the committee if any of the hospitals or other healthcare facilities, had any objections, or if this was maybe a compromise between some of the healthcare facilities and those who were interested in passing this legislation, if it was tweaked along the way. But I think overall, I'm glad to see this because I think, essentially it would only allow 2 people. And I really
2 to 4, didn't
2 to
say?
4, yeah, but 2 the whole time. And I think I'm okay with that because end of life issues are so difficult, and I don't know. It's a hard one for me, but I think overall, I think I like the idea that you get 2 people with you, no matter what. Coming up, we have a lot more on the way. We are going to be talking to Kevin Schneider, the morning meteorologist at KMIZ, about emergency preparedness.
Man, y'all sure do keep the folks at Salter Lawn Service busy, don't you? I'm Branden for Salter Lawn Service. Salter One Call does it all. Let me heap this on there, too. Maybe you like doing your own lawn maintenance. Maybe you like blowing your own snow in the winter. You like doing all that stuff. Did you know Salter Lawn Service does small engine repair and maintenance? So maybe you got like a riding mower and you like to plow your driveway. Well, who's going to put the plow on? Who's going to, change the oil and all that stuff? You can have the people at Salter Lawn Service do it. Anything with a small engine, garden equipment, chainsaws, go-karts. Yeah, even go-karts. Where are you going to go get your go-kart worked on? Salter Lawn Service, because they work on just about anything with a small engine. So you need maintenance. You need some work done. You've got something that's not starting. I bet they might be able to help you out at Salter Lawn Service. Check them out online. Salter One Call does it all.
She's going to talk to a key NATO ally. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. Vice President Harris has taken off for Poland amid a dispute over air support for Ukraine.
It's going to be an awkward tarmac greeting when she arrives after Poland blindsided the U.S. yesterday with that offer to transfer MiG-29 fighters to the Ramstein air base in Germany, which the White House and Pentagon firmly rejected. Here's what Admiral John Kirby says. We do not believe Poland's proposal is a tenable one. Officials adding they fear this move would put the U.S. and NATO in direct conflict with Russia.
Fox's Griff Jenkins says Russian jets keep buzzing Ukraine's capital today.
We can still hear the planes overhead, but no more of the outgoing air defense systems. We didn't just hear it, we saw it. It was a huge rocket that left no more than a few hundred meters from where we are now. But look, we're also getting reports of street-to-street, hand-to-hand fighting on the outskirts of Kyiv, and the Ukrainians now saying they're not sure how much longer they can hold back the Russian forces. The Russians just sent in a lot of reinforcements, about 200 vehicles.
Fox's Benjamin Hall in Kyiv. Ukrainian officials say they did work out a short-term ceasefire with Russia and 6 other cities to help civilians evacuate, though deals like that fell apart before with continued Russian shelling. More than 2 million Ukrainians have fled the country. Congress is closing in on more aid to Ukraine.
And we need to get this done and get it done very fast.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. The House may approve a bipartisan deal today, and perhaps the Senate by the end of the week. It would be almost $14 billion for Ukraine as part of a $1.5 trillion U.S. government spending plan. The price of gas is up another 8 cents today to a new record high. AAA's national average for regular $4.25 per gallon. And while President Biden predicts it'll keep going up, not much we can do with surging oil. Republican Congressman Buddy Carter tells Fox U.S. oil production must increase.
We have the resources here. We just have to simply turn the switch on.
Diesel's also at a record $4.88. America's listening to Fox News.
If you're living with aches and pains, especially if they're frequent and nagging and relentless, I want you to take a moment and think back to the last time you really felt good. Can you even remember what it felt like? Now, here's even a more important question. What would you give to go back to feeling like that again? Maybe it would just be nice to take a stroll with your loved one or play with your grandchildren. I've suffered from persistent, crippling pain almost all the time for about 5 years. When I started taking Relief Factor, I took it because my wife made me start taking it. I didn't think it would work for me. Yet here I am today, virtually pain-free, doing the things I love to do, all thanks to my wonderful wife and Relief Factor. I love that it's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors, and about 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. Are you part of that 70% that can get your life back? Your first step to becoming pain-free just might be to order the 3-week quick start for only $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF. Find out more about this offer. Feel the difference. relieffactor.com.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 7:03 right now in mid-Missouri. We have clear skies. Beautiful morning right now, and enjoy it because tomorrow that snow will be coming into the forecast. We're going to get more snow than we originally projected. That will continue well into Friday morning. Right now, 30 degrees in Columbia. It's 29 degrees in Jefferson City. Our high today will be about 48. Cloudy tonight, low near 27. Good morning, everyone. Here are some of the stories that we are working on for you at this hour. We'll begin with the SROs. Columbia's mayor and CPS's superintendent say the new agreement for school resource officers provides a secure environment where CPS students can focus on their studies and education to allow them to thrive academically. Columbia City Council approving an agreement with CPS at this week's meeting. It continues their cooperative effort to establish guidelines for the handling of minor school-related offenses, according to Mayor Treese and Superintendent Dr. Brian Yearwood. Meantime, Missouri Supreme Court Chief Justice calling on state lawmakers today to approve a bipartisan bill that is aimed at protecting the private personal information of judges and their families. Chief Justice Paul Wilson emphasizing court security during Tuesday's State of the Judiciary address.
Missouri judges have been harassed online and at home. They've been threatened, and they've had their personal information posted on the web.
Chief Justice Wilson says 11 states have approved the legislation enhancing safety for judges. He is praising a Chesterfield State Representative, Bruce DeGroat, for filing a bill called the Judicial Privacy Act. It creates a felony offense, a new offense of knowingly publicly posting on the internet personal information about a judicial officer or the officer's immediate family for the purposes of tampering with a judicial officer. Now to the weather. Snow projection totals are being increased for Columbia and Jefferson City in the latest models from the National Weather Service. These models will likely change again a couple of times today, but these numbers have definitely gone up in the National Weather Service, their latest forecast that came out here in the last 30 minutes. Most of the listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. National Weather Service St. Louis meteorologist Melissa Bird is expecting the snow to begin falling in Columbia and Jefferson City by midday tomorrow, with snow continuing throughout the night into Friday. Columbia is now projected to receive 2 to 5 inches of snow by Friday. That's up from 1 to 2 inches. Jefferson City has been bumped up as well, now 1 to 4 inches. Keep your radio tuned right here to 93.9 The Eagle for updated weather information. Missouri's governor is praising the winter weather response from MoDOT and Missouri National Guard crews during the numerous February storms. Governor Parson activating the National Guard for the first 2-day storm. That was the first 2 days in February, a storm that dropped 10 inches of snow here in Columbia.
MoDOT needs to be in those trucks clearing off roads. You know, the National Guard was there to be able to help stranded motorists, and which just makes us better.
MoDOT crews drove 2 million miles statewide in February. They used 86,000 tons of salt. They also used 780,000 gallons of salt brine. National Weather Service says 15.5 inches of snow and sleet fell in Columbia in February that impacted schools from across Boone County, including CPS. They have taken 5 school days for winter weather, plus 1 2-hour late start. CPS's Michelle Baumstark tells me they would look at eliminating one of their upcoming early release days if they have to take another snow day. She also notes that state law has changed. Its snow days are now built in the calendar via the number of hours versus days. State sets a minimum number of required hours of instruction at 1,044 hours, according to Michelle Baumstark. CPS intends to keep May the 26th as its last day of school. Jefferson City Public Schools, JCPS, had 7 snow days in the month of February alone. And a grand opening is set for later this month to celebrate the newly renovated Tiger Hotel in downtown Columbia. The name of the hotel is changing to Voco, the Tiger Hotel.
Zimmer's Inside Columbia magazine reports the newly renovated hotel and landmark will be offering more amenities and updated spaces. Voco is a luxury boutique hotel. Inside Columbia reports the historic Tiger Hotel sign will remain. The hotel includes the popular Glenn's Cafe. The facility is owned by IHG Hotels and Resorts. Don Luzader, 93.9 The Eagle.
All right, Don, thank you. And again, the sign will be staying. That's one of the questions listeners have had. Is the sign going to stay or not? And it is going to stay, according to the officials. Our news is brought to you this hour by the Candy Factory. Any time of the year is good time for tasty treats and delicious handmade chocolates and candies from the Candy Factory in downtown Columbia. Anniversary, birthday, and any day you can find them online. TheCandyFactoryOnline.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:07. In sports, the Missouri Tiger men's basketball team will open play in the SEC tournament. They're in action this evening, 5 o'clock our time. Tampa, Florida is the arena they'll be playing in Tampa. And a beautiful arena. I remember that being built several years ago or renovated at the time. Drove by there. Haven't been in it, but looks absolutely gorgeous. And they will be playing there 5 o'clock today. That means our pregame coverage will start at 4:30 on the Central Bank Tiger Radio Network. KCMQ FM 96.7 will be the station you can listen to in Columbia for all the action. Mike and Chris on the call. The opponent is Ole Miss. If Mizzou wins, they would advance to tomorrow's round and take on LSU. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:08. All right, Kevin, thank you. Right now, clear skies, 30 degrees. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Local companies are looking for local people at 709 midmohires.com. Roads right now pretty quiet in mid-Missouri. If you want to report a traffic issue, you can call or text us 573-874-9390. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes. We have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically that's wrong.
So that is who we are sending today to Poland and Romania to bolster U.S. support for NATO partners. Are you
what
feeling,
could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, are you feeling optimistic about that, anyone? I'm not feeling very
She
optimistic.
will be taking a plane. The plane will take off from the United States. It will then land in Poland. Planes are a method of air travel.
It's like reading the dictionary or Wikipedia or something. Hilarious. So I am not feeling much optimism about her taking a plane wherever she might be taking it today. But I am feeling some optimism from some comments I heard from Josh Hammer of Newsweek. He kind of indicated he thought that that this whole thing might be wrapping up sooner than people might expect. So I'm really excited. At 8:09, we will be talking to him about an opinion piece he recently wrote. So we will get back to Ukraine. And he had some interesting thoughts on Ukraine that I haven't really seen anywhere else. And I know, Jennifer, he came to Jefferson City to speak for Federal Society. Is that right?
He did. He was at the state capitol in the House chambers on our panel on critical race theory.
Oh.
He's a super smart, very entertaining speaker, so looking forward to having him on next hour for sure.
Wonderful. Well, another thing that's happening here in Missouri, and I don't know, we're like a magnet for murders, I feel like.
Woohoo! What a claim to fame, right?
But the national shows, right? The people who work for these national true crime productions have to be getting pretty familiar with Missouri as of late. We've had a lot of attention. And Jennifer, you turned me on to one specific trial, and I know, Brian, you've been following some really quickly, but a new show is coming out?
It is out. The Thing About Pam debuted last night on NBC. One reason I will say, being a criminal defense attorney and having dealt with these producers from around the country, is that we have more liberal, I hate to use that word on the station, but more liberal cameras in the courtroom laws compared to other states. So they're able to get more film, more footage, and even to get cameras into prisons to interview people, which is somewhat unique in the country. So I think that's one of the reasons that we get so many of these national shows like Dateline and 48 Hours. And now Dateline extensively covered the Russ Faria case, and now there is a fictionalized version of that true story starring Renee Zellweger playing Missouri serial killer Pam Hupp.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's pretty powerful. You know the case very well, and I saw a little bit of that last night. And the one thing, I reached out to Chris Hayes. Chris Hayes actually is writing a book. He's an investigative reporter at Channel 2 in St. Louis.
Friend of mine.
You know him very well. And I asked, they keep showing on NBC her like chugging a big gulp, drinking out of a big gulp. He said that he knew what they were talking about. Apparently that happened in court. But, the thing about Hupp, what's interesting is she still was saying she was a Dateline producer, a terrible case, but she is still under investigation, being looked at. Her mother fell off a deck, if you remember, in St. Louis County.
Over a balcony.
A balcony. And there's some real question. Dateline had people look into that, and they were very suspicious that that's what happened. So, but very powerful. And you're right, those cases, the Lindley Rennick case was on Dateline, and then 48 Hours is finishing up the Rennick case. Rennick's case was on Court TV. You've got the Pam Hupp case, and then you've got Elledge, and we also still have the case pending in Cole County. The guy that owned it was up the Golden Corral up in Quincy, and he's from Fulton and is accused of murder. I expect he's going to get a lot of publicity as well. So there's been quite a bit of coverage.
So this series that's out, is it multiple episodes?
Yeah, it's a serial show. I don't know how many episodes it'll be, and we'll have to wait and see if local attorney Richard Hicks, who was very instrumental in getting the wrongful conviction of Russ Faria, will be portrayed by an actor in the series, or if they'll just kind of omit his important character in that case.
Now, we don't want to give away any spoilers because I know everyone loves their true crime in this show.
That's true.
And so we don't want to give away any spoilers, but let's talk a little bit about just Russ in general and the murder, just like basic facts. What happened?
So this is a number of years ago. Russ Faria was at his weekly game night with his friends. His wife, Betsy Faria, was ill with cancer. She was dying of breast cancer, and she had this $150,000 life insurance policy that was mysteriously signed over to her quote-unquote best friend a couple of weeks before she's found brutally murdered after Russ comes home, and he thinks that she's killed herself. He has this, very emotion-laden call to 911 that they thought was like overplayed or like too much. And so they said, oh, this is a textbook spousal murder thing, despite all of these signs from phone records and everything else and cameras alibying Russ and putting Pam at the crime scene at the time that Bessie was killed. So
it was like a brutal murder
from the beginning.
She was stabbed like 50 times. I mean, just gruesome.
Absolutely.
And they basically just honed in on him from the very beginning. And then
because he was emotional in the 911 call.
And then he was ultimately convicted.
Went to prison. He went to prison. And the other thing to keep in mind, and Jennifer's spot on about everything, I mean, it is absolutely, to call it horrific is just an understatement. Chris Hayes has gotten, and Dateline's hinted at this, there's actually allegations of maybe police misconduct, evidence being prosecutor
as well.
And maybe possibly a former judge that wasn't, letting evidence be admitted. And it's really, it all happened up in Lincoln County.
Right.
That
This judge ruled that
yeah.
After Richard Hicks filed this motion, that no evidence could be presented to point the finger at Pam during Russ Faria's trial, which was an insane ruling, and luckily got overturned and led to Russ getting freed.
Right.
Well, and I love watching these shows that cover Missouri trials in Missouri and other things happening in Missouri, because you can kind of see these little Easter eggs. And I noticed I'd watched something and I saw something that said like JCCC, like the Correctional Center, little things that you're like, oh, that's somewhere here. And I know Hannah has seen some of these before. You were watching something and you saw actually there was a woman at a podium and there were all of these station mics and you saw an eagle mic.
Yes, I was watching,
To Make a Murderer, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And they were just playing B-roll footage of this hotshot attorney, Kathleen
Zellner.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just playing B-roll footage as they were introducing her. And I just caught a glimpse of a 93.9 The Eagle microphone, and I about fell off the couch. I was like, we're on Netflix.
From one of my murder trials, Judge Oxenhandler, there's a photo of him that's now stock footage of a judge looking thoughtful that you'll see them use in stories about the judges or the bench. Nationally, the APL ran it before. It's just, I was like, he was probably bored watching me talk at the time that photo was taken, and he says it was him looking very attentively, and that's what that photo stood for. I was just teasing him. He always paid careful attention in the courtroom.
Well, so I am a big fan of a true crime podcast called Crime Junkie. And
I've heard that before.
Yeah, one of the big things that they talk about on that podcast is it's not really fair for people to point the finger at, potential suspects based off of how they react to these situations, because you don't know how you're going to react in a situation unless you're in that person's shoes.
And everyone reacts differently.
Right.
Some people get quiet, some people are emotional, and just judging guilt or innocence based on, how people react to a shocking event isn't a very accurate way of assessing the guilt of an individual.
And the other thing is, and you know better than anyone from being in the courtroom, they only show on some of these shows excerpts, a few clips of what's said in court, so you don't get as a viewer, you don't get the you don't get really 100% picture of what is said in the courtroom, because some of the testimony is just not mentioned in the pieces. Most of it, some of it is. A lot of times they'll leave some of it out, though.
Or get some things wrong, or highlight things as super important that aren't. Yeah, I've lived that. It's not fake news necessarily. You have a limited amount of time to report on this stuff. But that's why I try, when I hear verdicts that I question, I try to respect that the jury sat there all day, every day, listened to every bit of all the evidence and came to a decision. I didn't sit throughout that whole thing, so I should give them the benefit of the doubt before I question the verdict, but not beyond all doubt. Let's just say that.
Well, I'm going to have to tune into this show because I don't practice criminal law, so I don't get these exciting stories about true crime, and so I get to relive them.
Renee is doing a great job.
Really?
Because Pam is such an inauthentic, bad person and bad actress, and she's doing a great job of portraying that. It's kind of ironic that she's doing a brilliant job acting like someone that's a fake actress, and a terrible, phony person.
I can see that. Okay, I am definitely tuning into that. We are also getting ready to talk about emergency preparedness. And Brian just left us, but I know there were a lot of drills and different things happening in Columbia yesterday, so we're going to get an update on that, get an update on the weather, and talk to Kevin from KMIZ about emergency preparedness.
Man, check this out. Some property you could own. It's a condo in the Country Club of Missouri in Columbia, and it's on the golf course. What's going on? I am Branden Rathert for Atterbury Auction and Realty Company. Check out this property, AtterburySells.com. 4,600 square feet, 3-bedroom, 4-bath, jetted tub, walk-in shower. The amenities are stunning. And here's the cool thing. Online bidding ends April the 7th, so you can get on to Atterbury Sells. You can see all of the pictures of this place that could be yours when you get on to AtterburySells.com and make a bid. And everything you need on there, by the way. It's all on there. Aerial photos, zoning stuff, auction terms, property information packet. It's all on the website for Atterbury Auction and Realty Company. This is how they're doing things now. It's really cool. Check it out, AtterburySells.com.
It's not 7:25-ish. It's actually 7:25.
Yay!
Do I win an award?
Yes, actually.
So
I don't know what the award is, but it deserves an award.
Okay. Well, it is time for What's Hot with Hannah.
So basically, the whole country is talking about What's Hot with Hannah, and it's Love is Blind, the Netflix series. They just released season 2 like a week or two ago. I've already binge watched the whole season. Stephanie, have you watched it?
I haven't seen a single episode.
Oh, Jennifer?
I hate admitting this. I don't do a lot of reality TV, but I binged that whole thing too.
Right?
It's fascinating. The premise is whether or not Love is Blind, and they have 15 men and 15 women that agree to go in these cubicles.
That are all good looking, right? That's
pretty much. They'll put like one or two just in for flavor, I think, but they never make it to the next part of the show. But yeah, they talk through a wall, and they're supposed to get to know each other based just on their, character and personalities, and not even get to see each other and have to decide whether to get engaged sight unseen.
Yeah, so they don't get to actually see each other until they've accepted a marriage proposal.
But they do get to hear each other's voices. Do you think there's for you, is there someone where you hear their voice and you're like, absolutely not immediately? Like if you would hear their voice and you're like, no.
Maybe if it's really bad.
Because one of the dating apps recently added something where you can where you can leave a voice. I think I forget. I don't use dating apps, but one of them you can actually leave a message so they can hear your voice, not a video, but an audio thing, because they thought it might be personalized. But
that's an advantage for Brian Houseworth and Brendan Rather and Gary Nolan, where they have these deep, beautiful radio voices.
I don't know. Even though I've been doing radio for almost 3 years, I don't know. I still don't like listening back to my voice.
It's so hard. Well, I think so. Okay, so there's these people. They talk together in cubes. Now, there's already been the first season. So, did it work out for anybody on the first season?
There were 2 couples that are still together.
Wow.
So then they move on to the next phase where they go on a honeymoon to Mexico, all at the same resort, and then they come back to the United States. And they have a couple of weeks before their weddings, and then at the wedding they have to decide whether or not to say "I do."
Yeah, at the altar.
At the altar. And they don't all say yes.
Right. So they do the vows, and then they're like, "Do you take, so and so to be your husband?" And the answer can either be yes or no. And sometimes one person says yes, and the second person says no.
So who gets to go first?
Okay, my boyfriend and I were arguing about this when we were watching the season finale, because it wasn't the same every time, so it's almost like the producers probably know.
So much of that stuff is fake and scripted. They do know. Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. But it's fun. It's fun to just kind of forget about that and just get caught up in the drama while you're working out or doing whatever.
I do think it's an interesting experiment. At its core, all the trashy drama aside, the whole concept of having to make a connection with somebody before you see what they look like, I think is really interesting.
But to make a decision, the compressed time frame, get to know, do you want kids? What do you think about money? How would this and that work?
Religion played a big role in this last season.
It did, yes.
But not really, I guess, if everyone on the show is already hot. I mean, it would be more risky.
They're not all equally hot.
Okay. Well, and I guess it's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But if if your personalities mesh and you're well, we're on TV, so this person has to be decently hot.
Well, there's been some disparities of hotness get paired up.
Okay, well, we will move on from hotness and start talking about emergency preparedness. Right after the break, we're going to talk to Kevin Schneider, the morning meteorologist at KMIZ. It's Emergency Preparedness Week. And Jen, you had some interesting takes on that for people in professional services.
Don't just be prepared at home. Have your business stuff ready too.
Really interesting. So we will get into that right after the break on 93.9 The Eagle.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. Gas prices are up again, 8 cents a gallon more since yesterday, to another all-time high, not adjusting for inflation.
AAA says the average price of a gallon of regular gas has increased to $4.25. As of today, only 15 states have an average gas price that's less than $4. California is paying the most at $5.57 a gallon, while Kansas and Oklahoma are shelling out the least at $3.79.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. An agreement for Ukraine to get military jets from Poland to fight the Russians has hit a snag. Poland wants to send them through an American airbase.
Poland's offer to transfer its MiG-29s to Ramstein Air Base in Germany blindsided the U.S. government, and now it's clear the U.S. military would not accept the offer for fear that this would put the U.S. and NATO in direct conflict with Russia.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin. Vice President Harris is on her way to Poland now, then Romania tomorrow for meetings about Russia's invasion. America's listening to Fox News.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 7:31. Beautiful morning here in mid-Missouri. We continue to warm up. Going to be pleasant today. Sunny. Our high today around 48. Tonight, cloudy skies, a low near 27. Tomorrow is Thursday. Snow, and that snow totals are being increased right now. The projections all across mid-Missouri. We're expecting a high tomorrow of 37. Snow continuing into Friday with a high of 34 degrees. 31 right now in Columbia. It is 29 degrees in Jefferson City. Good morning, everyone, and here's some of the stories we are working on for you at this hour. Snow projection totals have been increased for Columbia in the latest models from the National Weather Service in St. Louis. Most of the listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. National Weather Service St. Louis meteorologist Melissa Bird expects snow to begin falling in Columbia and Jeff City by midday tomorrow, with snow continuing throughout the night into Friday morning. Columbia is now projected to receive 2 to 5 inches of snow by Friday. Jefferson City, 1 to 4 inches in the latest projections from the NWS. Keep your radio tuned here to 93.9 The Eagle. Updated weather information. Meteorologist Kevin Schneider from ABC17 will join us live right after this newscast about emergency and severe weather preparedness, but we'll also talk about the updated forecast as well. Speaking of the weather, MoDOT crews plowing more than 2 million miles statewide in February. There were winter storms in 3 of the 4 weeks in February. Missouri's Governor Mike Parson is praising MoDOT's performance.
You know, we're more prepared now than we have been for a long time in these weather outlets. We're kind of getting used to knowing what it's like to be out there, and we really can be the best place for our resources.
MoDOT's Emergency Operations Center was open for 9 of February's 28 days. MoDOT's Linda Wilson Horn tells 93.9 The Eagle crews used 86,000 tons of salt across the state in February. It's about half of what they use in a normal winter. February's winter storms closing schools across mid-Missouri, including the region's 2 largest districts. Columbia Public Schools taking 5 school days for winter weather, plus 1 2-hour late start. CPS's Michelle Baumstark says if they have to take another snow day, they'd look at eliminating one of their upcoming early release days. Jefferson City Public Schools had to take 7 total snow days in the month of February. In downtown Columbia's popular Tiger Hotel will be changing its name to Voco the Tiger Hotels. That's according to Zimmer's Inside Columbia magazine. They're reporting that Voco is a luxury boutique hotel. This will be the first Voco in the Midwest. Inside Columbia magazine reporting the historic Tiger Hotel sign downtown will stay put. A March the 24th grand opening is scheduled. I'm almost got that story complete on our website. We got a picture of that sign. That's the biggest thing people are asking us about is the sign, and that sign will stay in downtown Columbia. I'll have that up in a few minutes, 939theeagle.com. Our news is brought to you this hour by Dr. Kent Willett Dental Associates. They practice conscious sedation dentistry to relax your fears. Make an appointment now, 573-445-5300, WillettDentalAssociates.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:34. SEC tournament for men's basketball opening today in Tampa, Florida. The Mizzou men's basketball team in action. They'll take on number 13 seeded Ole Miss this evening. The Tigers coming in as the 12 seed in the tournament. Tip-off set for 5 o'clock. Catch all the action on Zimmer Central Bank Tiger Network affiliate KCMQ FM 96.7. That'll start at 4:30. Mike Kelly and Chris Trevino. I'll have the call, and that'll be coming up this evening. You can hear it live. All of the action if Mizzou wins. They'll play tomorrow, and the opponent, LSU. Our sports is brought to you this hour by Witt Print Shop, where your printed products are so much more than ink and paper. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:35. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. Midmohires.com to find a job, post your job opening. Today, roads have been pretty quiet. Providence and Vandiver, we have reported several days that crews have been out there. They're trying to install a new signal pole. They've also had traffic malfunctions, but to get it completed, they need to get concrete. They are waiting on the concrete, so it's unclear if they're going to be able to get out there today or tomorrow. But when they start to return, they'll be installing a new signal pole as soon as the concrete arrives. I'll keep you updated on that. John Ogan and I are in regular contact at Public Works. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes, and we have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Welcome into Wake Up Columbia. Branden has the day off. My name is Stephanie Bell, and I am joined by attorney Jennifer Bukowsky.
Good morning.
Good morning. And also joined by Brian Houseworth.
Good morning. Great to see you.
And producer Hannah.
What up?
And we are really, Brian, give us an update on what happened yesterday. We were talking about the stuff happening on campus.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about the statewide tornado drill. And actually, I got to hear that firsthand. I was waiting in line to get into the Capitol for the State of the Judiciary. I was running a little bit behind. And so I was
not Stephanie Bell.
And I was standing outside. So I was up close and personal with the tornado drill. But, you know, everything I think went largely as planned yesterday.
Yeah, and obviously it's a chance for people to practice and really get into the idea. And I know they wanted schools and businesses, they being the folks at SEMA and the Highway Patrol and others, the police departments, to really in the schools to get involved so people will be prepared if and when it does happen. It certainly can happen. It seems to me, and Kevin would be able to document it as far as statistics, a lot of the storms that I've seemed to have covered over the years seem to be in the evening or overnight, but we've had certainly tornado warnings during the day before, so that was good. I stepped out of our building here on Lamone Industrial and got a recorder out, and I could hear about 4 to 5 different sirens from my vantage point into my recorder from across the highway, so everything seemed to be working. But the other thing about that is it's a chance for the crews to see if there is a siren that's malfunctioning, then they were able to get it taken care of. So that's important. But this is severe. It's basically severe weather preparedness week, and Kevin Schneider is obviously someone who knows it better than anybody else.
And we will welcome him into the show now. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. How are you guys doing this morning?
We are
great.
doing
Thank you, Kevin.
well. So tell us more about this week and what your role has been this week, what you're focused on during Emergency Preparedness Week.
Yeah, I think our role is to kind of get on the same page, right? It's a concerted effort between us meteorologists and emergency managers, especially, to hopefully getting folks to think about what that plan is here going forward. Now that we're in the month of March, that's when, again, a lot of folks start to kind of get the itch, I guess, for some storms, try to get out of the winter months. Unfortunately, not doing a great job at that this year, but that's hopefully what we're trying to do, is get everyone on the same page, think about that severe weather plan, what you need, what maybe you don't have in your shelter, where your shelter is, things like that, and try to, get everyone to focus on it for a week, whether it's tornado safety, lightning safety, and flash flooding. It's all something that we need to think about.
So I want to hear some of your tips for being prepared. I talked to Branden yesterday, who is notorious for wearing flip-flops, and something my mom always told me was make sure you have like a pair of shoes on. Make sure you have tennis shoes close by. So beyond that, what are your other biggest tips that people kind of, overlook?
I think it's simply just knowing. You almost have to have it hammered down, that plan, so well that you almost don't have to think about it. That's what I would suggest a lot of folks, that even if you have some sort of storm anxiety, something like that, you get a little bit startled by some of these showers and thunderstorms, whether they're severe or not, know what your plan is. That helps so much. It puts your mind at ease to know what it is so concretely, where you're going to be during the day, where you can go. And then, like you mentioned, hard-soled shoes, that is a big thing that a lot of folks, especially here in Missouri, maybe overlook, having that in your shelter. That's a great idea. Helmets, that's a great idea as well. That way when you get down and, have to duck for cover, that helps cover your head. And that's where, again, a lot of the traumatic injuries come from, are head injuries, according to some of the studies.
Kevin, we appreciate you joining us live. I know you're super busy with your television hits as well, but we appreciate you taking a few moments to talk to us. The other thing I think is very important is a flashlight. That has helped me get to the radio. And sometimes the power is out. I usually try to have a couple of flashlights and then some extra batteries for radios, because you don't know if the power is going to be out. But real quick, 2 quick questions. Flash flooding. We saw that in Cole County. I was in Jeff City last June, and boy, my goodness, the water at Hy-Vee within 15 minutes, it was almost 12 inches up into the parking lot. It came up that quick. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, as always, I mean, we always preach, if you get across a flooded roadway, if you can't even see the road in front of you, you have no idea how deep it is. So stay out of things like that. You always got to turn around and try not to drive across those flooded roadways. The problem is, and where I get a little bit kind of sketched out by it, is at night, it's impossible to see just how deep that water is. So we try to tell folks, again, and we try to look out for those flash flooding events. Again, last June, that was historic. No infrastructure is built to withstand 5 inches in just a handful of hours. So hopefully we can stay away from things like that. But unfortunately, that's something that we have to deal with, especially in urban areas where you've got more of that concrete, that water just can't go anywhere sometimes. So stay away from those flooded roadways. And again, the big problem is if you can't see how deep that water is in front of you, why bother driving into it, right?
That's exactly right. Great advice. One real quick thing, and I know we're talking about, obviously, tornadoes, and we're talking about severe weather, but we're not out of winter yet. Right now, the National Weather Service has bumped the projected snow totals 2 to 5 inches. What are you looking at right now for Columbia and Jefferson City, and what kind of impact will this have on our roads? These numbers just keep going up a little bit.
Yeah, Brian, that's a good question. And a lot of times when we get into either these early or late season systems, it gets a little bit tricky to kind of figure out exactly what the impacts on the roadways are going to be. And I think we do have a couple of things working in our favor, whether it's that high sun angle, now that we're in March. A lot of that snow, if it tries to fall during the day, is going to have a tough time. So I think we're going to be ultimately a little closer to about 2 to 4 inches, maybe on the lower side of that scale, because we're probably not going to see that snow in Columbia and Jefferson City moving in until the evening hours on Thursday. But regardless, you get a couple of inches out there. We've all seen what that can do to those roadways in a short amount of time. So again, try to stay off the roads. I think the worst of it's probably going to be Friday morning in terms of the roadways.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Kevin. We know you are busy with weather events and the Emergency Preparedness Week, so we appreciate the tips and the update on the snow totals.
Oh, always a pleasure, my guys.
Thank you so much, bud.
Thanks. So, Jen, we were talking a little bit about this emergency preparedness, and you think about it when you're at home. You know, what do I need? Do I need warm clothes, a blanket? Brian said flashlight. I said shoes. But a lot of people don't think about it when it comes to their office.
Right. And after the Joplin tornado, a lot of law firms were wiped out. All of their client files literally scattered to the wind. Wow. And you need to think about that, too. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Have a backup that is somewhere that a flood, a fire, or tornado won't ruin all of your client files, and you have those essential documents at home, too. Make sure you have essential documents in a safe, secure place, and backup copies of them scanned and somewhere secure online, because getting that stuff back is such a hassle after a disaster like that. It's just, well, stitch in time saves 9. How many more of these little colloquial sayings am I going to come up with right now? But yeah, it's important. And that really impressed upon me, like how ruined those law practices were. Your business records are important to think about in emergency preparedness, too.
You're exactly right. And I mean, I remember the Jefferson City tornado, and it was in the middle of the night. My law office missed it by about a block. I would say maybe a block and a half. But I'm on the 3rd floor of a tall building, and it was 1 a.m, I think, and I was on the phone with my landlord saying, is the roof on, and is there water leaking into my, do I have windows and everything? Because all of my stuff, obviously, at this point is backed up. But there are some papers and equipment and other things that I was very, stressed about. And there were offices that, just the windows were out, rain in, and others just had structural damage. And what people don't realize is then, even if you could save your files, you're not allowed in those buildings until they're cleared. And so a lot of people, the files weren't in the wind, but they were still, not accessible when they needed to be. And so, you think about that, and you basically have to have everything in the cloud now. And it's easy to get stuff and throw it, on your desk. Or I sometimes I'll save things on my desktop and not in my cloud storage. And it's a good reminder to, you never know what's going to happen. And no one in Jefferson City that night thought, what was going to happen did. And I just remember being so concerned about, your office.
Yeah. My husband Brant and his brother Brock actually had their house destroyed in Columbia, the first house they bought, a month after they bought it.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Tornado came through Columbia, ripped the roof off, dumped it on the car. They had made one payment on the insurance for the house and one payment on the car for the insurance, and maxed out both. Meanwhile, their parents never had a claim the whole time, paying their insurance premiums. They paid 1 month's premiums and got the full benefit of both. So make sure your insurance is up to date. That's too, great. I guess.
Great advice.
I'm getting anxiety just here, of all of my to-do list of things that I know I should be doing that I probably have fallen behind on, right? On emergency preparedness.
Hopefully not your house insurance.
No. But
and
just
renter's
I think
insurance
about,
is important too.
Well, and I think about where my photos are, things that you can't replace, that you can't really replace. And so I know I have photos that, I don't have digital copies of, in my basement. And I know there are other things that I probably should put in a different spot or scan into a cloud system. And, those are the things that people kind of let go.
And you're super busy. So there are services that should sponsor this show that you can send those things to take care of that for you.
To have them do all of it. Well, and luckily this show is archived. So if you guys are wanting to watch and listen, watch live, we are on YouTube, and we're on YouTube, right, Hannah?
Yes.
Yes, we've been kicked off, but I think we're back. But yes, very exciting. We are on YouTube and Facebook, and so luckily, all of that is archived basically automatically, unless YouTube decides to take us down again.
Maybe it's lucky. What if one of us runs for office someday? Or the opposition will be crawling through all this for something that we said to take out of context, right?
I am sure of that.
Hashtag canceled.
Yeah, we will. I'm sure I will be canceled, and all of the little funny things that Hannah likes to catch that I say that I don't even realize
what
I am saying. But we are going to talk more about Ukraine coming up, and then we have a really exciting guest at 8:09, Josh Hammer of Newsweek. He just said some things about Ukraine that I haven't heard anyone else say, and so I want to get him to say that to you all. So that's coming up at 8:09.
Got a message for you from Pro Pumping and Hydro Jetting. You want to call them, 474-5489, especially if you've recently been onto their website, pro-pumping.com, and sent them an email. Here's what happened. See, Hannah crashed the website because she told everybody there's a picture of me on there working in overalls emptying out a septic tank. It's for real. And everybody went there and it crashed the website. People were sending emails to Pro Pumping and Hydro Jetting to ask about all these services they do with emptying lagoons and septic tanks and service programs and maintenance programs. And so many people got on there, and then they started emailing and they were asking some of those questions and did not have the opportunity to respond to all of the emails. So they're asking that you call 474-5489, 573-474-5489. It's the number for Pro Pumping and Hydro Jetting. Check them out. Pro Pumping and Hydro Jetting, you dump it, they pump it.
But what's he doing instead? He's going to every petty dictator on the face of the map and begging them to make up the difference. We learned that the president's team has been in touch with Maduro's regime, the murderous Maduro regime in Venezuela, and is preparing to offer them a special package that will ease the restrictions, ease the sanctions, ease the punishment on that outlaw regime, and get them to make up the difference in oil production from Russia. We learned that the president...
That is Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. Some harsh words about Biden yesterday.
And I felt very represented because it's unbelievable to me that Biden, instead of looking on maximizing American oil production and gas leases on federal lands, is looking at Venezuela, the murderous Maduro regime. Not only that, but looking at making a new deal with Iran. Talk about your evil empires by going through as an intermediary Russia, believe it or not, and then Saudi Barbaria. You know, that cruel kingdom. They're talking about potentially having a presidential visit to that place where women are de facto slaves and they torture people all the time and hack up journalists. It's kind of crazy, the strategies that they're now pursuing to resolve this oil situation instead of drill, baby, drill. Let's become energy independent again, like we were under Trump.
I've seen so many tweets, drill, baby, drill. It's going to become kind of a mantra, and I think it already is. And I think it's really interesting because I was hearing some folks talk about Russia and all the sanctions on Russia, and they said, you know what, really, Russia is so self-sufficient that even with all of these sanctions, you know, their day-to-day life is really not going to change much. And that's exactly what I thought. I said, drill, baby, drill. We're having these problems because we're not independent.
They're self-sufficient maybe with oil, but they're dependent on the world for a lot of other things. So I think it will be painful. And I am concerned about punishing ordinary Russians for Putin's actions. That could have potential unforeseen consequences, and it's not necessarily fair.
Well, and it's hard to know exactly, you know, what's going on there because so much of what we're getting is propaganda. But, we are hearing that they are having, that the people aren't necessarily supporting all of Putin's actions. And I wonder how much of that we're getting kind of from Ukraine, saying Russia's own people aren't super excited about Putin invading Ukraine. But
well, picking on ordinary Russians is just going to play right into Putin's narrative of, you know, the Western society being against them and that they're the victims and all of this rhetoric that he's been trying to push and this revisionist history that he's been, you know, propagating for years now.
Exactly. Well, and I think, you know, back to Josh Hawley's comments, I mean, we're going to have to do something. Hannah, you just got a text that gas is what in Colombia?
Yeah, so one of my Facebook friends posted that she just saw gas in Colombia for $3.99.
It's over twice what it was, a couple of years ago?
I think if we go
Trump was president?
I think if we go over $4, there will be an absolute revolt. I mean,
I'm going to have to get gas today, and I just have a pit in my stomach about it.
And, you know, it's not something that I typically, fortunately, I don't pay a lot of attention to it. And we've talked about this. It's kind of something I have to get to work. And so it's something I do. But I actually had the conversation with my husband on the way home yesterday. I said, given what we know, should I stop for gas now or wait? You know, I have half a tank. Should I fill up now or wait till tomorrow? I won't repeat on air what exactly he said, but it was we are. Basically, it doesn't matter. We're screwed anyway, is what he basically said to me. And so it is interesting, and not that there's going to be a revolt yet, but there will be a rally today for Sarah Walsh's bill to repeal the gas tax. That's coming up today at 3 p.m. at the Capitol. I think a lot of people who are feeling the pain at the pump will be there joining her. Also coming up, we've got Josh Hammer of Newsweek talking about Ukraine. That will be at 8:09. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle.
cost of filling up keeps going up, hitting another record high.
I mean, that's ridiculous, man. Come on, $4 a gallon. Give us a break.
It's actually more than that. AAA's national average for regular, $4.25 per gallon now, though this man also in Tampa, Florida, is resigned to it.
I'm paying more and just dealing with it. Yeah. Life goes on.
President Biden says prices will keep going up with not much we can do, blaming the Russian invasion and oil surge. Republicans demand he ease regulations to encourage more U.S. oil production. Now to Ukraine.
The sound of jets overhead at the moment. Certainly we're seeing an escalation here today in the capital. We're also getting reports of hand-to-hand fighting in some of the outskirts to the northwest. And so, again, what many people had been feared, the anticipation that the Russian troops may be starting to move on this city, that may indeed be happening today.
Fox's Benjamin Hall in Kyiv as Ukrainians say there's a short-term ceasefire in 6 other cities to let civilians flee, though those have fallen apart previously with continued Russian shelling. Vice President Harris is on her way to Poland amid a dispute. Our NATO ally there offered to supply fighter jets to Ukraine if they're sent first to a U.S. base in Germany, which the Pentagon rejected, fearing direct conflict with Russia. Congress is closing in on a bipartisan budget deal to provide nearly $14 billion in aid to Ukraine. 4 men accused in a bold kidnapping plot in court right now in Michigan. Their trial starting this morning. Fox's Jeff Manasso on the case live.
Dave, the jury is set and opening statements begin in federal court in Grand Rapids for 4 men accused in an alleged plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 over the governor's lockdowns and other COVID-related policies. The men have pled not guilty, saying they were set up by paid FBI informants. 2 other men have pled guilty and will testify for the government separately. 8 others face state charges in the case. Dave.
And Jeff, meanwhile, Hawaii is getting ready to be the last state to drop mask mandates later this month as COVID cases fall. America's listening to Fox News.
Life is about being active. Whether it's about going on your daily tasks or exercising, you know you're well when you're regularly active. But what happens when being active actually hurts by the end of the day? This is the position I found myself in a number of years ago. Everything I wanted to do in my daily life, all of the activity it called for, was held captive to almost constant nagging pain. When I heard about Relief Factor, I was skeptical, but my wife said, give it a chance. Not long after I took it, I could feel the pain begin to melt away, and I've been taking it ever since. And I can tell you that Relief Factor has helped me get my life back. I love that it's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors, and about 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. Your first step to becoming pain-free just might be ordering a 3-week quick start for only $19.95. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF, 800-4RELIEF, or ReliefFactor.com. Find out all about this offer and feel the difference.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 8:03. We have bright sunshine right now across mid-Missouri. It's 33 degrees. We're expecting a high today of around 48. Cloudy skies tonight with a low near 27. The outlook for tomorrow. Snow moving in, a chance of rain and snow. It'll start that way, kind of that mix, if you will, but primarily it's going to be snow. Anywhere from the early afternoon, depending on where you're at, maybe closer to 5, 6 o'clock in the evening is when the snow is going to begin. That time continues to fluctuate. Tomorrow's high 37, then snow continuing all night Thursday night into Friday morning. More on that in just a moment. Good morning, everyone. Here's some of the stories we are working on for you at this hour. We'll begin in Joplin, where police say one officer has been killed and a man suspected of shooting him is also dead after a confrontation in Southwest Missouri. Assistant Police Chief Brian Lewis says 2 other officers injured in the shooting are hospitalized. One's in critical condition. The other is in serious condition. Lewis says it all started about 1:30 in the afternoon Tuesday, a disturbance. Police responded. They exchanged gunfire with a suspect. 2 officers injured. Lewis says the suspect then fled in a stolen police car. Gunfire exchanged again, injuring another officer and the suspect. That suspect has also been shot. It's unclear what sparked the shooting, and Lewis says there is no continuing threat to the Joplin community. We'll get an update from our colleague Don Luzader in a little bit, who's been working that story for us at Zimmer all morning. It has been since yesterday. Meantime, a grand opening is set for later this month to celebrate the newly renovated Tiger Hotel in downtown Columbia. It's being renamed Voco, the Tiger Hotel.
Zimmer's Inside Columbia magazine reports the newly renovated hotel and landmark will be offering more amenities and updated spaces. Voco is a luxury boutique hotel. Inside Columbia reports the historic Tiger Hotel sign will remain. The hotel includes the popular Glenn's Cafe. The facility is owned by IHG Hotels and Resorts. Don Luzader, 93.9 The Eagle.
Snow projection totals have been increased for Columbia a bit from about 2 hours ago. In the latest projections from the National Weather Service in St. Louis, most of the listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. National Weather Service St. Louis meteorologist Melissa Bird is expecting the snow to begin falling in Columbia and Jefferson City by midday tomorrow, with snow continuing throughout the night into Friday morning. NWS is projecting right now Columbia to get about 2 to 5 inches of snow. Meteorologist Kevin Schneider, who just joined us live here, says probably closer to 2 to 4 inches. But as he pointed out, it all has to do with sun angle, things like that. Jefferson City getting anywhere from 1 to 4 inches. Bottom line, we will have accumulating snow in both Columbia and Jefferson City. You want to keep your radio tuned here to 93.9 The Eagle for updated weather information. Governor Parson praising the winter weather response from MoDOT, the Missouri National Guard, during our numerous February storms. He activated the Guard during the first 2-day storm, which dropped 10 inches of snow in Columbia February 1st and 2nd.
MoDOT needs to be in those trucks clearing off roads. You know, the National Guard was there to be able to help stranded motorists, and which just makes us better.
MoDOT crews drove 2 million miles in February, and they used 86,000 tons of salt. They also used, at the entire state, 780,000 gallons of salt brine. And Missouri Supreme Court Chief Justice is calling on state lawmakers to approve a bipartisan bill that is aimed at protecting the personal information of judges and also judicial officers around the state. Chief Justice Paul Wilson emphasizing court security during Tuesday's State of the Judiciary address.
Missouri judges have been harassed online and at home. They've been threatened, and they've had their personal information posted on the web.
The Chief Justice says 11 states have approved legislation enhancing safety for judges. He's supporting a bill from Chesterfield State Representative Bruce DeGroote. It's called the Judicial Privacy Act. It creates a felony offense of knowingly publicly posting on the internet personal information about a judicial officer or the officer's immediate family for the purposes of tampering with a judicial officer. 93.9 The Eagle News is brought to you live in this 8 o'clock hour by the Callaway Bank. Life can be unpredictable, but your bank shouldn't be. 7 days a week. You can text or call them. Callaway Bank. They're with you for the moments that matter. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:07. In sports, Missouri Tiger men's basketball team opening play in the SEC tournament. That'll start this evening. 5 o'clock is going to be the tip in Tampa, Florida. Their opponent tonight will be the Ole Miss Rebels. Mizzou coming in is the number 12 seed. The Rebels out of Ole Miss. Oxford, Mississippi is where their university is. They come in as the number 13 seed. Pre-game coverage 4:30. KCMQ FM 96.7. That is your flagship station here at Zimmer for Tiger basketball, and they're on the air, Mike Kelly and Chris Trevino at 4:30 today. Sports is also brought to you this hour by the Callaway Bank. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:08. All right, Kevin, thank you. Great job as always this morning on television with Molly and on radio with us and joining us live as well. We appreciate it. 33 degrees. It is 8:09. Traffic check is with MidmoHires.com. Local companies looking for local people. MidmoHires.com. Find a job or post your job opening today. Roads are pretty quiet here in mid-Missouri. If you do want to report a traffic issue, our number is 573-874-9390. We'll have more team coverage in less than 30 minutes. We have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
This is not Branden Rather. This is Stephanie Bell. Branden has the day off, and so this is Wake Up Columbia with Stephanie Bell featuring Jennifer Bukowsky this morning. Thanks for joining me, Jen.
Hello, hello. Great to be here.
And we also have producer Hannah.
Good morning.
Good morning. And so we are so excited to be joined by Josh Hammer, a Newsweek opinion editor. Jen and I had the opportunity to see him speak about CRT when we were in D.C. for the National Federalist Society Conference, and then somehow you convinced him to come to Jefferson City, so he was recently at the state capitol also talking about critical race theory.
And the University of Missouri. So
Interesting.
Josh gets around giving smart speeches all over the country.
But what really piqued my interest was the opinion piece I saw about Ukraine this week. Jen, you read it.
I did, yes. It was an interesting column encouraging people to calm down about the Ukraine situation. And is Josh with us?
Yes.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Welcome to the show, Josh. Josh Hammer of Newsweek, opinion editor.
Happy to join you guys. I'm on the road in Detroit, Michigan at this moment doing some more Midwestern FedSoc talk. So happy to call back from the road.
Well, Josh, I read your column, and you said you ended it with, "But Putin is not Hitler, and this is not the beginning of World War III. Temper your emotions and your hot takes accordingly." That brought to mind this line that I'm reading, "Winter is Coming" by Garry Kasparov, who's like the, widely accepted as the greatest chess player of all time, and no Putin ally. He's written this book, "Winter is Coming," back in 2015, "Why Vladimir Putin and the Enemies of the Free World Must Be Stopped." And he says, "Of course, Putin is no Hitler. That unspeakable evil will never be matched, although those who lived through the horrors of Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot may disagree. It is important, though, to remember that in 1936 and even 1937 and 1938, Hitler was no Hitler either." And he goes on to explain like the adulation that he received during the Olympic Games and the meeting with Chamberlain, things like that. The recognition he got on the world stage were the things that allowed Hitler to be Hitler. And Putin has something that Hitler never had, nuclear weapons. So why is it that you're so calm about this and so sure that this could not lead to World War III?
Look, I think for a certain set of person, a certain type of American, certainly, if I can use a slightly derisive phrase, a certain type of boomer, someone who kind of came of age, obviously kind of during the Cold War in the U.S., Garry Kasparov obviously came of age under the Iron Curtain itself. For someone who kind of came of age during the Cold War, you are always kind of on the march, and you are kind of always on a war footing with Russia, with the old Soviet Union. I don't think it's an accident, guys. From my perspective, it is not an accident that at a time when the Democratic Party is looking like it's going to get wiped out this fall in historic fashion at the ballot box. Truly, the polls that we are seeing, if you extrapolate to the national stage, it is looking like Republicans might be able to retake House and Senate majorities, the likes of which they have not seen in basically 100 years since the Calvin Coolidge administration. That's kind of what I've read from Henry Olsen of the Washington Post, who I really kind of trust with these things. So when you're looking at that kind of unprecedented wipeout, when you're looking at 4-decade high inflation, supply chain crisis, the southern border obviously up in flames, spiking homicide and violent crime rates, all the various kind of woes that we are having on the domestic front. If you're Joe Biden, if you're kind of pushing 80 years old and you kind of came of political age during the Cold War, what better thing to do than to pick on Russia, to pick on the former old ex-KGB guy? And it almost makes too much sense. And none of this is to say that Putin's not a bad man. He is a bad man. He poisons, he murders his political enemies. Navalny, of course, the Russian government seems like it attempted to poison and murder him when he was in Berlin in Germany, if I recall. This is a bad dude. He is a bad guy. But that's not to say that Ukraine, on the other hand, is something that we should pretend that it is not. It is not kind of a U.S., U.K., London, Paris, Washington, D.C. anchor of Western liberal democracy. It is a profoundly corrupt country in its own right. It is overrun by its own problems, its own corruption, its own oligarchs here. And I think the imperative for sober American audiences, for citizens and statesmen alike, is to take a few deep breaths, calm down, recognize that Ukraine is not a NATO country. Our Article 5 security commitments have not been breached here. And we are not in an obligation to send our 18-year-old boys to go fight and die for the Ukrainian sanctity of Kyiv.
Yeah, I mean, that's what stood out to me in your article. Is just Ukraine is just as corrupt as Russia, if not more so. And talking about Ukraine, and I think the media is kind of glossing over that, and everyone's kind of idolizing Zelensky, and you're just missing, so much of the history there. So can you flesh that out a little bit more?
Sure. So Ukraine obviously was part of the Soviet Union. I mean, the particular kind of Russian-Ukrainian dynamic goes back a very, very, very long time. But Stalin obviously did horrible, horrible things to the Ukrainian people under communism. I mean, there was the Holodomor, obviously the kind of famine. Historians still debate how manufactured the famine was. It's kind of a genocidal measure back in the 1930s, where upwards of 1 million, perhaps even more than 1 million Ukrainians were starved to death as a result of what the Russians and Stalin in particular did. So there's a very old conflict. I mean, it obviously goes back much further than that. Here we're talking about kind of adjoining places, both of kind of of an ethnic Slav background. Ukrainian and Russian linguistically are distinct, but they obviously they share a lot in common from kind of a language perspective. So we're looking at two peoples that are not that different from one another. As pertains to modern Ukraine, after the fall of communism, after the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89 and the formal dissolution of the Soviet Union in '91 here, a lot of these kind of former Soviet satellite states in kind of Central and Eastern Europe, they took their time. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do to kind of flee communism and get kind of a legitimate democracy, a legitimate market economy up and coming. But some countries have done a better job than Ukraine has. I mean, I have spent time over the past year just in Poland and Hungary and, Warsaw and Budapest. These places were overrun by communism during the Cold War. But they've done a better job, frankly, than Ukraine has. Ukraine is a bastion of corruption. And they kind of waffled, I think, for about 20, 25 years or so, really kind of from the fall of communism until roughly the 2014 Maidan revolution there in Ukraine. They kind of waffled between whether they wanted to kind of go into the Western EU, NATO sphere of influence or kind of more the Russian sphere of influence. And what happened in 2014 was the president at the time, a guy named Yanukovych, who was pro-Russia, he kind of reneged upon a previously agreed upon commitment to kind of take Ukraine closer to the European Union as far as trade and diplomacy were concerned. And they had a full-on revolution. We would call this a color revolution. It was kind of a color revolution, largely orchestrated probably by kind of EU, Western European, probably America, maybe even like Soros-linked NGO types. And they supported this revolution to topple Yanukovych and effectively put in place a more pro-Western government. And that's kind of been the situation in Ukraine since. There's been various types of kind of pro-Western government, but whether it's Zelensky or his predecessor, a guy named Poroshenko, they were all kind of roughly pro-Western. The issue is that kind of all of this kind of NGO, liberal internationalist infrastructure in Ukraine, it's effectively become a money laundering operation. And the money laundering operation is predicated upon Ukraine remaining within kind of the broader Western sphere. So put another way, all of these kind of wealthy financiers, a lot of their investments will go belly up if Ukraine were to just be swallowed up by Russia tomorrow. So that's kind of what's happening in the backdrop here. And because there's been so much foreign money flooding into Ukraine, a lot of kind of the oligarchs there have reciprocated by funding initiatives like the Clinton Foundation. But because of this relationship, I think people are justified in looking at this quite skeptically. I've even seen a rumor. I cannot confirm this, but I've seen a rumor that Zelensky's house has like Zelensky himself has a $30-40 million place in Miami, which is where I live in South Florida. I have not been able to confirm that, but there's a lot of sketchy money in Ukraine, just like there's a lot of sketchy money in Russia is the point.
Sure. So we are talking with Josh Hammer, who is with Newsweek, and you recently wrote this opinion piece on Ukraine, spelling out many of the things we've been talking about already today. I heard you say elsewhere, though, something that also surprised me. You made a prediction that this whole thing could be over here fairly quickly, and that, Russia could kind of say, here, we had a couple of small wins, and that, a week or two from now, this could all, not go away, but be somewhat resolved. Can you make that prediction here?
Like, how would Putin have that off ramp? What do you foresee happening?
Well, apparently I've been wrong so far, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure the extent to which it makes sense to double down. But look, the Russian economy is not doing well. Okay, I mean, whether it's the stock market, whether it's the ruble, the currency, obviously whether it's Visa and MasterCard suspending kind of international operations there, they're having various kind of financial services and banking failures. Russian assets are being seized overseas. Other kind of overseas Russians are kind of selling their assets lest they be retaliated against. We saw that with Roman Abramovich, who owns Chelsea FC, the historic English soccer club there in kind of London. So it seems to me, or at least it seemed to me about a week ago or so, that the pressure, just given the tanking economy, was going to start to ratchet up very, very, very quickly on Putin. A lot of kind of these oil and natural gas oligarch types in Russia, they kind of historically have enjoyed their fancy yachts on the Mediterranean. They enjoy vacationing like Americans do in the south of France and Italy, Greece, places like that. So when their lifestyle, when their kind of daily lives are infringed upon, it made sense to me that Putin's kind of window of opportunity would necessarily close. That hasn't quite happened yet. I should say it did seem to me about a day or two ago, I saw a couple headlines floating around that it looked like there was a possible deal on the table where Russia would effectively formally take Crimea, which Putin seized in 2014. Then they would take the Donbass region of kind of largely ethnic Russian, far eastern Ukraine, and then Ukraine's membership in NATO would be formally taken off the table. And in exchange for that, the military operation would cease. I saw a couple of those headlines. Nothing seemed to have happened to it. But at the end of the day, I still think this thing gets wrapped up relatively sooner rather than later. I think I would just be hard-pressed to put a precise time frame on it. But on the other hand, Russia and Ukraine have, they've effectively been in a state of war since 2014 because that's when Putin took Crimea. He took Crimea in February, March of 2014. And it's not like they've had nice diplomatic relations since then. So it was largely a Cold War for 8 years. The war just got hotter again. So it's hard to foresee Russia and Ukraine getting along anytime soon. I mean, at least until kind of a more pro-Russia leader is put into Kyiv. But at a bare minimum, that deal that I just described there strikes me as a reasonable enough deal. And if I were Zelensky, I would take that deal personally.
Well, Josh, thanks so much for joining us today. What's your FedSoc talk on coming up here?
Oh, yeah. So yesterday I was at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and today I've got two talks here in Detroit, which is where I'm currently staying. And I'm talking about the same thing all three times, actually, which is my proposal for a jurisprudence of what I call common good originalism, which is kind of a more communitarian, kind of more nationalist strand of originalist thought, is the way I describe it.
High-level legal nerd stuff. We'll have to check that out on the FedSoc website, Josh.
Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
All right, coming up, we will have the Morning Bell. Some of the best stories coming out of Ukraine are private businesses stepping up to help Ukrainians.
Amen.
It's time for the opening bell with Stephanie Bell on Hot Talk 93.9 The Eagle.
You know, some of the best stories coming out of Ukraine, I think, are private businesses stepping up to find a way to aid Ukrainians. And moms in general. We talked about the moms who left strollers at the train station, I think in Poland, for folks that were fleeing Ukraine. We talked about Elon sending up his
Starlink satellites to provide internet. Private solutions.
I love it. And so I really enjoyed reading this article from Airbnb, and they are saying that they will offer free short-term housing to up to 100,000 refugees fleeing Ukraine. It's funded by donors to the Airbnb Refugee Fund.
And that had been an effort started, sua sponte by individual people just booking Airbnbs in Ukraine saying, I'm not coming, use it to offer housing. And those Airbnb owners were doing that to provide shelter, but still getting remuneration from generous people in the United States. And now there's a more official effort by that company, but all private, no government involved solutions. I love it.
It's nice to hear from your libertarian loving heart, right? All these private businesses stepping up and doing things faster, quicker, more efficient than the government ever could, right?
Right, exactly right.
All right, coming up, we would be remiss not to say that our hearts are with the entire community of Joplin, specifically the Joplin Police Department. They lost an officer yesterday in the line of duty. 2 other officers were injured. We will have an update. Brian Houseworth has been talking to our sister station down in Springfield. More details are emerging this morning, so we will have all of that at 8:35.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. There's another attempt to get Ukrainians away from Russian shelling.
Those humanitarian corridors, they have failed time and time again over the last few days. Today they're trying again. There is meant to be a ceasefire at the moment in 6 of those cities. It remains to be seen if they can be held.
Fox's Benjamin Hall. Vice President Harris is on her way to Poland for meetings about Ukraine. Ukraine's government says the Chernobyl nuclear power site, now under Russian control, is running on generators with a power line damaged. The United Nations nuclear watchdog reports no critical impact on safety at the site. The Tennessee legislature advances its own version of a Don't Say Gay bill.
The Republican-backed measure would ban textbooks or materials that promote, normalize, support, or address LGBT issues or lifestyles. It's similar to a bill in Florida that sparked controversy, but this bill goes further. It applies to all K-12 public schools. Florida's is only for grades K-3.
Fox's Tom Ricotti. America's listening to Fox News.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. It is 8:31 right now. We do have partly sunny skies. 34 is our current temperature in Columbia. We're expecting a high today of around 48. Tonight, cloudy skies, low near 27. Chance of snow tomorrow. Those projections, by the way, have increased for our mid-Missouri area in Columbia. Now expecting anywhere from 2 to 5 inches, according to the National Weather Service. Kevin Schneider thinking closer to 2 to 4. But certainly we are expecting accumulating snow in both Columbia and Jefferson City. Good morning, everyone, and we're going to begin this hour with some breaking news. Columbia authorities are right now working a head-on collision as we speak on I-70 Drive Northwest. This is near I-70. I just got off the phone with Boone County Joint Communications. They're telling me that a dump truck has collided with an SUV. This is near I-70's 123-mile marker. And again, authorities are on scene. There are a number of emergency crews in that area. Avoid it if at all possible. Again, the best description I can give you from what they're telling me, I-70 Drive Northwest. It's near I-70. It's near the 123-mile marker. A dump truck colliding with an SUV. Apparently, one of those vehicles is now in the median right off the side of the interstate. So people are slowing down on the interstate to take a look, and we may have some traffic issues as well on I-70. If you're in that area and it's safe, please let us know if you have any additional information, 573-874-9390, and we'll keep you posted on that. But avoid the area if at all possible. Meantime, snow projection totals are being increased for Columbia in the latest models from the National Weather Service in St. Louis. Most of the listening area will see snow tomorrow through Friday morning. National Weather Service St. Louis meteorologist Melissa Bird expects snow to begin falling in Columbia, Jeff City by midday tomorrow. Snow continuing throughout the night into Friday. Columbia now projected to receive 2 to 5 inches of snow by Friday. Jefferson City 1 to 4 inches. You want to keep your radio tuned to 93.9 The Eagle for updated weather information. MoDOT plow crews driving more than 2 million miles statewide in February. There were winter storms in 3 of the 4 weeks. Missouri's Governor Mike Parson is praising the performance of MoDOT.
You know, we're more prepared now than we have been for a long time in these weather outlets. We're kind of getting used to knowing what it's like to be out there, and we really can be the best place for our resources.
MoDOT's Emergency Operations Center was open for 9 of February's 28 days. MoDOT's Linda Wilson-Horn tells The Eagle crews used 86,000 tons of salt across the state in February. It's about half what they use in a normal winter. CPS has used 5 school days right now, snow days for winter weather, plus they had 1 2-hour late start. CPS's Michelle Baumstark says if they have to take another snow day, they'd look at eliminating one of their upcoming early release days. JCPS had to take 7 total snow days in the month of February. In downtown Columbia's popular Tiger Hotel is changing its name to Voco, the Tiger Hotel. That's according to Zimmer Communications Inside Columbia magazine. Voco is a luxury boutique hotel. This will be the first Voco in the Midwest. According to Inside Columbia magazine, the historic Tigers Hotel sign downtown will stay. There's a grand opening scheduled for March of the 24th, and we have a picture of the iconic sign, the Tiger Hotel sign, on our website, 939theeagle.com. Many of you have been wondering about that sign. That sign will stay, according to Inside Columbia magazine. Our news is brought to you this hour by Hemi Construction. Homes and lots in the southwest neighborhoods of Chapel Hill Meadows, Nursery Heights, Creek's Edge, and Timber Brook. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:34. In sports, Mizzou men's basketball team opening play in the SEC tournament in Tampa this evening. They'll take on Ole Miss. Tigers are the 12th seed. Tip-off is set for 5. Catch all the action tonight on KCMQ FM 96.7, Central Bank Tiger Radio Network. 4:30 is the pregame. Mike Kelly and Chris Trevino will have the call. Again, the way the format works, if you win, you advance. If you lose a tournament game, you are done in the tournament and hope to get a berth either in the NCAA or the NIT. Our sports is brought to you by Lacrosse Lumber. They have small enough to have one-on-one service. Make it happen now, customer service, but they're big enough to have everything a contractor needs. Lacrosse Lumber, it's on Grindstone, just west of 63 here in Columbia. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:36. Traffic check with MidmoHires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. MidmoHires.com to find a job, post your job opening. Today, as I mentioned in our lead story in this newscast, Columbia authorities right now on scene of a head-on collision near I-70. It's actually on I-70 Drive Northwest. It's near the 123-mile marker on I-70. I'm told by authorities that the dump truck has collided with an SUV. One of those, and I'm not sure if it's the dump truck or the SUV, I'm told, is off to the side of the road, very close to the interstate. So that's going to impact, I'm sure, traffic on the interstate. People are slowing down in that area, traffic being impacted. Avoid the area if at all possible. We don't have any information right now on injuries. More team coverage at 9:03, and we have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Houseworth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Welcome into Wake Up Columbia. We are celebrating International Women's Day a day late with 3 ladies on the show. This is Stephanie Bell. There is Jennifer Bukowsky.
Hello.
And producer Hannah.
Good morning.
We need a wig for you today, Brian. Would you wear a lid?
I probably would. I mean, if you have, we've talked about a helmet. I probably need that for severe weather. We talked about that.
You do. And when he said you need flashlights, tennis shoes, and a helmet, I can picture you, Brian, at home, ready for the tornado with your helmet, a flashlight in each hand, and your tennis shoes ready to go.
No. His helmet will have a built-in flashlight.
Oh, there we go. There we go. I like it.
That'd be awesome.
I like it. Things you need for Emergency Preparedness Week: helmet, shoes, flashlights, and cloud storage. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's our tips for your week. We, heard this news yesterday. My heart breaks for the Joplin community, for law enforcement officers across the state. Anytime something like this happens, I just feel for them. And the story that's coming out this morning, the details of exactly how it all went down it's like something on a movie, really. I mean, there was there was an initial altercation, a second altercation, a chase.
Yeah, a stolen police car.
Yes.
Brian, can you tell us the details?
Right now, and Jennifer's absolutely right, there's a stolen vehicle, and I've been in touch quite a bit with Don Luzader. The city of Joplin has called a press conference for 9 o'clock. We'll get more information at that time. But a lot of the details from what Don described is that, and by the way, there's a picture, and I have not seen this picture until now. This is up on joplinglobe.com, and then I'll explain as best I can. But if you take a look at that picture, that appears to me to be the stolen vehicle that was stolen by the suspect. You can see all the evidence markers. For people who don't know, those 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that would probably be shell casings that are in that area, and that's a detective looking down. But there was a shootout, and obviously we'll get more details at 9 o'clock this morning. But it all started, there was some sort of a disturbance. That's the information that Don Luzader had reported. There was a disturbance in the North Park Crossing Shopping Center on Geneva Avenue there in Joplin. Police encounter a suspect. This is all according to authorities. There's an exchange of gunfire. We don't know if he shot first, etc., but 2 officers were shot and struck by the rounds in that particular exchange with the suspect. Then there was a pursuit that ended several minutes later. There was a second exchange of gunfire that took place. A third officer was injured, and as Jennifer said, that's absolutely correct. The suspect stole a police utility, a police vehicle, and there was a shootout there. One of the officers has died. The suspect has died. One of the officers is in critical condition. The other is unstable. So basically there are 3 crime scenes, one at this shopping center, one at 9th and Connecticut, and one to the south. But yes, it's just very, very very, very disturbing, and the investigation is being turned over to the Highway Patrol. And again, we'll get some more details, obviously, at 9 o'clock. Now, there is a witness here, Kim Jenkins, that is quoted in the Joplin Globe, and they did a really nice job. They've been updating their story. She said she saw a guy across the street hiding behind her neighbor's fence, said he had a gun. She says an officer in a car came barreling down the street. She stepped outside, tried to point out where the suspect was hiding, and is unsure if the officer saw her or not. But she says the man ran to a nearby apartment building. The officer came back down the street, pulled to a stop right in front of a van that the suspect was using as cover, and that's when the suspect opened fire on the officer and shot him. This witness said the officer didn't even have time to get out of his car, was shot through the windshield of his car. That was just posted moments ago. It's just absolutely horrific.
Yeah, she sees a gun in the suspect's hand. She sees a patrol car, and then she steps outside of her house to point out his hiding place. Yeah, it's a risky situation to step outside and into for that witness.
Right into gunfire, right into essentially a shootout.
Exactly. And apparently the tire may have come off the suspect's vehicle, but again, we'll get more details. Don's going to have another updated voice here, but the only other thing I can add is that Congressman Billy Long has issued a statement expressing his condolences to the officers who were shot, and he says he is just shocked. I believe he's in Washington based on his statement for votes right now. I'm not 100% sure about that, but he did issue a statement that is in his congressional district, of course.
Yeah, well, I will reiterate, our hearts are with the law enforcement community and also the community of Joplin. It's shocking news and horrific, and I guess we'll learn some more details at 9 a.m.
We will, obviously. And real quick, guys, and then I'll get out of your way. Just a reminder that head-on collision on I-70 Drive Northwest. Avoid the area if at all possible. It's near I-70's 123-mile marker, a dump truck colliding with an SUV.
Okay, I think now we are actually going to go to the phone lines. I think Nathan has a question. Nathan, are you there?
Yeah.
Welcome into Wake Up Columbia.
Hey, thank you. I've actually kind of messaged y'all in the past on Facebook. I saw your post this morning about calling in. I have a federal lawsuit with my county, and what I have found out through sunshine requests as well as getting a hold of an investigative file is that the county's lawyers have been colluding with the local prosecutor to try to get me charged. They even went as far as to solicit a statement from the HR girl. Basically, they asked her for this statement and acted like they were going to use it in my case. It was never entered in my case at all. They actually gave it over to the prosecutor, who then sent it to the Highway Patrol. It's kind of a long story as far as what's going on, but they wrote an illegal search warrant into my Facebook. I'm a political activist, very active here locally, and they targeted me, so that's why I filed this federal lawsuit. But like I said, I have since found email after email where these lawyers are colluding with the prosecutor, and I'm just curious, like, what is the ethical canon of that? That seriously cannot be, because at the same time that they're trying to get this prosecutor to have me charged, because they sent it to a special prosecutor, right, because it was conflict of interest. But at the same time that they're trying to get him to get me charged, they're arguing the Heck Doctrine and the Younger abstention in my case.
Yeah, Nathan, it sounds like a really complicated legal situation. There are rules of ethics that attorneys are bound by, and there's a method that, you can report any ethical violations, but it sounds too complex to get into whether or not there are any ethical violations at this time, and this wouldn't be the appropriate place to go into those details, as I'm sure your attorney has cautioned you not to talk
but
very publicly here about all the details of your case. But thanks so much for the call, and sorry to hear that's happening to you. Best of luck with your case.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I mean, Nathan does bring up a good point. He found out this information through, transparency through Sunshine Law request. And we often talk about that.
Strong sunshine laws
on the show. If you're interested in how your government is acting, you have the Sunshine Law available to you to submit requests to political subdivisions and ask them for what types of communications or documents they have that may relate to you or other matters. So transparency is always is a benefit in Missouri, I think, to a lot of people.
Show Me Institute's taking great advantage of that.
You're
on the board of, and you're one of the young advisory board members of. But they have the Checkbook Project, which is monitoring how all these municipalities are spending our money, and they have also been doing FOIA or sunshine requests to school districts about critical race theory and have documents showing Columbia Public Schools does have that in its curriculum. So when you hear people denying that this is even taught in schools, we've got the records. We came with receipts. Yes, this is happening in the public schools right here in Columbia.
Well, and I know a mutual friend of ours, Kim Herman, has been on the show before, and she's the one who filed the lawsuit down in Springfield. And the basis of that lawsuit was initially sunshine law requests that they had sent to the school district and found out what the teachers, these slides that the school district was using to train the teachers. And that's when they initially found out, oh my gosh, these teachers are being trained with this information. This can't go on. So very interesting stuff you can uncover using your Missouri Sunshine Law. Coming up after the break, we are going to, let's circle back to the state of the judiciary. Something that I learned more about yesterday in the speech was veterans courts. Have you ever participated in a veterans court?
No, I am not a veteran, but they're great things. And we also have this vaccinations becoming a hot topic in custody cases. We can get into that after the break as well. What do you do when the parents disagree about vaccinating their children?
Wow, interesting. That and more after the break. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle. Gary Nolan coming up at 9 o'clock, a friend of Jen's. Jen, you were on the Gary Nolan show yesterday, right?
Yep, I've been going on the Gary Nolan show for 10 years now, once a week. Can you believe that?
That is amazing.
It's
And
so fun.
we're so glad to steal you away from Gary for a morning for Wake Up Columbia. You sent me this article, and I find this fascinating. So COVID vaccination status becomes a hot topic in child custody cases. And first, I'm thinking, so this is between two parents who are, not married or getting divorced or whatever. I think it's probably a hot topic even among some married couples.
Oh, yeah. It could lead to divorces.
Right?
Actually, when we all had lockdowns, I was like, well, maybe there'll be a baby boom. That'll be a silver lining to this, shutdown and lockdown, because these busy, young people that are married now have more time at home to, create babies. So maybe that'll be something good that came out of this. Instead, I'm seeing a divorce boom. Maybe it's just my age or whatever. But
I've heard that from friends who practice.
A ton of divorces. They're super busy. I guess getting locked in the house with your spouse led to a lot of divorces and business for divorce attorneys. Not only is that keeping them busy, but disagreements between parents about whether or not to vaccinate their children is now a big disputed issue in custody cases, and whether or not an unvaccinated parent can still have visitation with the children. That's being litigated in court as well. There's only anecdotal evidence of what's going to come out of all this, but one recent case, a New York court dealt with the dilemma arising from a change in CDC guidance where there was a third child who was only 11 years old, and the parents had gotten their older two vaccinated, but disagreed about whether to vaccinate the 11-year-old. And the court ordered it's in the best interest of the child, and the child should be vaccinated.
The court ordered the child to be vaccinated?
Yeah,
wow.
Finding that's in the best interest. There are other things where the parent, just against the court's orders that they have an agreement the parents will agree on medical decisions, defies that and goes and vaccinates the kid anyway.
Wow.
There's all kinds of issues arising out of this that pertain to family law.
So, have you and your husband basically been on the same page on vaccination? I think for the most part we agree. My husband and I, we agree.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think it's hard for me. My kids are small, and so I think the different ages matter, right? And so I think I'd be more likely to vaccinate my older kid as opposed, my 10-year-old as opposed to my 5-year-old. But at the same time, my 10-year-old is a boy, and some of the stuff that's come out, says heart issues for young boys, so that weighs on my mind, right? And so, but I think in the end, if I needed to do it, we go to events, we travel, we do, and there are certain things that still require a vaccination. So I think that also weighs on parents' mind. But I can't imagine, the courts having to kind of determine that. And then, yeah, if you're immunocompromised or something, and you have someone who's not getting vaccinated, the visitation rights, if you're being super careful, but then you are being forced to give your kid to someone who, potentially poses a risk.
Yeah, and then what if the grandparents, it's going to complicate the holiday plans. It's a mess, hot mess.
But at this point, hasn't everyone had COVID? I've had it. I mean, how much longer are we going to have to continue to have these conversations? I think the
everyone
rates,
in my household got it except my youngest son.
Really?
Didn't get it. Yeah.
So
and my older son, he's a teenager, was thrilled to go self-quarantine within the house. We had to all separate from each other. He was running to the basement with his desktop computer. It was like the best news ever that he got to get away from us. He's turned into such a teenager. Oh my gosh.
I would not want to have to do COVID again, but I feel like I had it in January, so I feel like I have, a 90-day pass. But it's interesting in how these courts are going to have to kind of sort these things out. And I think, beyond, you think parents, but then grandparents and other people in these custody battles, and you think of all of the things the court has to sort out. This is just another thing on top of all of that.
The good thing is attorneys got to eat too, so it's more business for attorneys, right?
In fighting over vaccination
Someone
status.
gets some benefit out of it.
And something, the schools the schools haven't said much, about it yet. And they have flu clinics, but I do wonder going forward, since we have all the other vaccinations that we have to get for school, what will schools ever require a COVID vaccination? That's in my mind. Or will it be kind of like the flu where they just say, hey, we're having a clinic. We encourage you to show up and get the COVID vaccine. And I don't know, again, it freaks me out that we're still not quite sure how often we're going to need a booster or when we need a booster. Is it going to be an annual thing? Have we figured that out yet?
It's changing all the time. We're told one thing, and then it turns out to be another. I think time will tell. Hindsight is going to show that we did a lot of foolish things during this pandemic, but hopefully we'll be better, ready to go if we have, God forbid, another one in the future.
I think you're right on. Well, thank you. This has been so fun. I'm so glad you joined us this morning.
It's been great to be here, and stay around for the one, the only Gary Nolan. He's next.
He is coming up, and we will have, something we're watching for in Missouri, maps. Like, we were supposed to have a congressional redistricting map. There was supposed to be a compromise. I heard maybe a map would hit the Senate floor this week. So far, nothing. So we'll have an update for that, for you tomorrow. Bye.